We are live and you may begin whenever you're ready.
All right, everybody, welcome to November 16th Design Review Board Full Board Meeting. I'm calling to order. We have a quorum of 4 members out of 7. I think we're waiting on one more with Bruce. Hopefully he'll arrive. If not, we can keep going. I don't have any opening remarks. Do I have an approval of tonight's agenda?
We approve tonight's agenda.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right, approval of last meeting's minutes. Staff, could you list off the dates that we are approving?
Yes, we're approving October 19th, October 26th, November 2nd, and November 9th.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve October 19th, October 26th, November 2nd, and November 9th meeting minutes?
So moved.
I hear a motion. To hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, now I'm looking for general member comments. So these are for any comments that are not pertaining to any applications tonight. I know there was a couple late affected parties for some of the applications. I'm going to hear those affected parties during those applications just to keep it consistent and so we're not confused on what we're talking about. So I just think that makes the most sense. So we will jump right into the agenda. So we have up first Lakeport Cluster. We have an appeal. And I believe this is being presented by Cam as the appellant, correct?
Yes, that's correct. If we could get
Alright.
the application on the screen, please. Awesome, thank you. So essentially, I am appealing a decision that was made by a panel due to a misapplied guideline. If the cluster essentially submitted an application to have a cluster standard defined allowing security lights on their homes, the cluster standard was approved. And in the cluster standard, it permitted the cluster members to install security lighting that were motion censored on not only the rear and the side as a design guideline permits, but also in the front. There is a concern that because the design guideline specifically states that the DRB generally does not approve floodlight fixtures in the front street side of cluster properties, specifically cluster properties that are attached in nature, that there was a misapplied guideline and the DRB did not have potentially all of the information, or this panel didn't have all of the information that was to be reviewed in considering this application. So the cluster standard for Lakeport cluster as currently approved provides no ability for the DRB to evaluate if a security light causes a negative impact on adjacent properties or neighbors. The standard would negate the requirement of a DRB application, which several applications have been before the DRB in terms of attached unit clusters, members submitting applications for security lighting in the front that have been denied. And so having a cluster standard established would not require that member to submit an application. Thus, there's no control for the DRB to resolve any lighting issues or areas of illumination that extend and encroach into adjacent lots. So that's the basis of the appeal.
Okay.
Mr. Adams, to be clear, you are appealing on behalf of the board of directors for the association, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Great. So the board members that approve this, I don't believe are here. So we don't have any way. It sounds like there was this information that it was just overlooked and they didn't have the information that this necessarily could go Well, it says on the front of the home right here in the application. But I see what you're saying. I understand. Does anybody have any questions about the appeal? Jim, did you have any questions for Cam?
No. Mm-mm.
Mike, did you have any questions?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
And then Karen, do you have any questions?
No.
Anybody have a motion that they want to make on it?
I would make a motion to, I guess, accept the appeal.
All right, any motion it on for new information?
I suppose new information or
Or
misapplied standard.
misapplied guideline.
Misapplied standard,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think, yeah, so there's a motion on the table.
Second.
All right, there's a motion in a second. Is there any further discussion? The only thing I would say is it does say, I mean, they clearly had that it would so what I'm reading is what's on screen right now, obviously, can be installed on either the front, side, or rear of home with following stipulations. And basically the appeal is that our standards do not allow for motion lights. Okay, yeah. All right. I don't have anybody else have any other questions? Or we can take a vote. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Oh, wait.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion, any against? Nay. All right, so we accept the appeal. So now we hear the application. What I'd like to do is just hear the application for these specific security lights. The rest of it is still approved. All we're doing is kind of discussing this. So if you guys could unmute Mary so we can talk to her real quick about this and see what their intent was with this guideline. Hey, Mary.
Hi, Michael. So first of all, just for context, we not only just included it in the proposal, but made it clear in the discussion at the beginning that we were asking to have the lights put on the front. It wasn't just sort of hidden in the proposal. The other thing is because I knew that this would be an issue when we had the presentation before the board on September 7th, I proactively brought it up and said, I know this is a potential concern. And the reason that we wanted to include this is because our owners have had concerns about security. We've had 2 robberies in the last year at South Lakes Village, which is right next to Lakeport. We've had bicycles stolen. And the way our homes are designed, some of the front entryways are kind of down a little alleyway, if you will, between the garages of the home and the next door. And it's dark at night. So owners wanted to put security lights on the front for security reasons. The reason that RA generally, according to your guideline, doesn't want security lights is the legitimate concern, I would say, about glare to pedestrians, vehicles, and adjacent residences. And we share that concern, we really do. But we have the same goal, not to have the glare, but we have a different proposed solution for it. And so our recently approved standard allowed lights on the front, but it includes restrictions that are not in the RA guidelines. Namely, we limited the Kelvin and also the lumens as an alternative way of reducing glare. In addition, we specify the bulb needs to be shielded and pointed downward. And we actually go into a lot of detail in the version that we have about it can't shine on the neighbors or on common property, especially if there's sidewalks, but also some of our homes are uphill from the homes behind them. So we had a concern about that as well. And we don't allow, we just want residential flood security lights, not floodlights or the box lights. And we thought that this would be a way of solving the reason that the RA guideline doesn't allow them on the front. And apparently the earlier DRB panel agreed that this alternative approach would work. So given that they accepted allowing it on the front of Lakeport homes, I presume that they considered our restrictions sufficient to take care of the problem. We're hoping that the full panel will agree as well.
So I guess the one thing for the front of these homes, I think the ideal situation would be, do all these homes, Mary, have kind of that front balcony?
No,
No.
about maybe half do.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking, if we could tuck it up under there, I guess, my big concern is if we put it up too high, that then no matter if it's on a motion sensor, that it would, it could easily create glare, on everybody, on the two surrounding properties. Whereas if they're all tucked up, relatively 1-story height, it's not going to create too big of an ideal. Because, when I'm looking at the cluster guidelines or our security lighting guidelines that we follow, we have a provision for front elevation, but it's only for detached cluster properties. We don't have a provision for attached or detached or for attached, which is what you guys are. Why? I honestly don't know. I'm looking at, for detached cluster properties, I can have the floodlight fixture is located on the front elevation, mounted under the eaves, either shielded or unshielded. Why we have that provision for detached, I'm not really sure. But I think we could see, like, here's a perfect example. To me, as long as we keep it on the first story, that's really where the light needs to be going anyway. I don't want someone to tuck it up under that eave, way up, above their garage. Whereas that here, they could easily just tuck it right underneath their eave for the garage for that picture on the right, or for the balcony, they could easily put one right underneath there where that front door is kind of tucked back, like you were saying, down the alleyway. To me, could we maybe clear up the guideline just to kind of voice that?
Yeah, actually, our intent was that it go basically over the garage and not higher than that.
Okay.
So under the balconies, for the ones that have it on the front and mounted at the top of the garage, there's a bit of an overhang where there's a gutter there, but not on those houses. There really isn't a good alternative place to put it. So yeah, that would be fine. If you wanted to add a stipulation, we would certainly actually agree with that. We don't want them up high either.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's, and I could ask the affected party, Cam, would you see if we limit the location of these to the kind of the first level elevation? It doesn't specifically say in our guidelines that attached cluster properties can't have floodlights on the front. It just doesn't really acknowledge it one way or the other. As long as we're kind of working to put them on that first story under eaves, if that exists, or under balconies, if that exists. Do you foresee an issue with the board having another problem with that?
So first, this is not about Lakeport Cluster. This is about the DRB and the decision that was made. It's not about being against. The DRB has the flexibility to approve these light fixtures in any location. The problem is, by approving this, it negates the need for an application. It becomes cluster standard. And so if the DRB is going to allow a cluster standard such as this to be against the design guideline, it's a slippery slope in terms of the precedent you're setting for future clusters to request the same thing. Or alternatively, a member who has an attached home in a cluster that gets denied at a different level because they have submitted an application to install a security light in the front of the home, versus having, in comparison, a cluster that doesn't have to submit an application, a cluster member that doesn't have to submit an application and has no availability of enforcement because it's now approved by the DRB as their standard.
Yeah, well, and I think with Lakeport, it's a unique set up. Like there's certain clusters that, putting a motion security light on the front facade of the house, when there's no driveway, there's no, direct kind of need for that, where it kind of had like if you look at any of the older style neighborhoods that don't have these driveways and they only have carports, putting a security light on the front of your house is probably, we're not typically going to want to approve that. But for a cluster that has garage doors like this, where there's minimal other types of lighting, I think, Mary, the only other lights you guys have on the front here is the garage isn't there a recessed light like right above the center, or on
They're
some of these
they're
garage
on the
ones?
side, usually on the one side or the other of the garage, or on the side of the walkway that goes into the garage.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
they are complete, they're cylinder shaped where the bulb is inside it.
Yeah. So I for
Oh,
this
excuse
instance,
me, we also have some pole lights that
okay.
they're all shielded all around.
For this instance, I think we're actively talking about it, and I don't know if it necessarily. I don't think it's setting a precedent for other clusters, because this is only for one specific cluster that we're letting them approve it, and we're kind of narrowing down where they can approve it. I think we should just clean up the language of where it can be, and then I think it's probably okay to go. Jim, did you have any thoughts on it?
No, I think that your suggestion is a good one.
Mike, did you have anything?
Nothing else to add. I'm in.
You muted yourself, Mike.
I said nothing else to add, sir. I was
Okay.
saying I'm in agreement with what's been discussed thus far.
Okay, Karen, did you have anything?
No, I think that it's all right. I mean, it's the right thing to do.
All right. Well, with all that said, does anyone want to make a motion?
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve security lighting, including the front elevation, but for a stipulation that the front elevation light be located no higher than it be located on the first story plane level of the house, and it be tucked up under the eave or balcony per phase of home that exists in the community. And that it still follow all those other guidelines that we employed with motion sensor, 3000 Kelvin, et cetera, et cetera.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No, sir.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any against? No. All right, motion passes 4-0. All right, thank you, Mary. All right, moving on to application G for 11901. This is also an appeal. Is Mr. McGurk on?
Yes, I am.
Hello, Mr. McGurk. You have appealed a decision about some security cameras. So, your letter is clear, but you know the drill. Just you need to prove a misapplication of a guideline or introduce new information. So, if you could please go ahead, we will hear your appeal.
Thank you. So I'm appealing it in two cases: the misapplication of the guidelines and additional information that was not available to the panel discussion. Specifically as it relates to the guidelines, during the panel discussion, the discussion was more about whether the cameras were offensive. In fact, one statement that was made during the discussion was that the alternatives to a camera were more offensive than the cameras themselves. So there seems to be a lot of discussion around whether a camera was offensive and not applying the guidelines to that are spelled out in the guidelines around inconspicuous location, unobtrusive and matching the color of that they're mounted to, along with whether the cameras were strictly necessary on the east and west side of the house. So it was more about whether it was offensive, and the guidelines actually never, that I can remember, and without actually came up in the discussion with the panel. In addition, the applicant has a camera already located on the front of the house, under the eaves of the house. It's an existing camera that wasn't discussed and is new information. And in contrast, the camera that is located on the front of the house up in the eaves versus the cameras that are located directly in the front of the house and on the side and rear of the house. There's a huge gap in the guidelines between the two. And I'm specifically referencing page 31 of the package that has a front elevation of the house. In this particular elevation, you can see where the camera on the front of the house is located. The second camera is under the eaves of the house, just above the long rectangular camera window to the left of the garage. You can see it tucked almost directly above that, up underneath the eaves. And so there's a camera there already. And so you can kind of get a feeling for the contrast between the existing camera on the front of the house and the new camera that was installed on the front of the house. So those were the reasons why I appealed the decision without belaboring it anymore.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim, you were on the original panel for this one, so you're not allowed to vote, but you can be a part of the discussion for the appeal. And I have a question for you, Jim. Did you guys talk about how, because to me, the one guideline that I feel was misapplied was, these being installed in an inconspicuous manner. Would you guys discuss why these were on the siding versus kind of put up on the trim boards and try to kind of minimize their impact versus kind of sticking out the way they do?
No, not really, but I do agree with what you're saying. It would be less conspicuous if it was raised up and on the siding, if it can't be the same color as the siding.
Right. Mike, did you have anything to talk about?
No, I mean, to your point, in terms of having them be in an inconspicuous location, I think that's the sticking point for me. So,
yeah, Karen, do you have anything?
No, I agree with that. We've always had them tucked in somewhere into the architecture, so that slapping it on the outside of a wall doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, I think that guideline was misapplied here. So I'll motion to accept the appeal on that basis of the cameras are not unobtrusive, and that guideline was misapplied. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion to second. Any further discussion? Just a reminder, Jim, you can't vote on this. You'll just have to abstain. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Jim has to abstain. So 3-0-1. So we'll accept the appeal. So is the applicant here? Is Mr. Platt here?
Yes, Mr. Platt is here.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Platt.
Good evening. Can you
How
hear
you
me?
doing? We sure can.
Okay, so let me go through briefly what we're talking about. Bruce Ramo, who led the discussion, was meticulous in looking at the extensive photos that were submitted and Mr. Lazowski was contributing to the discussion. And Mr. Ramos specifically addressed the question of small, unobtrusive, and the issue of location. And he found that they were small, unobtrusive, and properly located. These cameras were 2.5 by 2.5 by 4.5 inches on large surfaces. They were placed by Vector Security, which has put in 28 systems of multi-camera around Reston in 3 years. We also checked with a number of other security vendors. With Xfinity, they had put in 20, and many others. Home Depot, they're flying off the shelves, and Baldino's as well. All of these cameras are small and inconspicuous, and I will tell you, the locations were picked by Vector Security specifically to assure that they would give optimal coverage and also be inconspicuous. They blend with the trim color. Mr. McGurk has mischaracterized the discussion that occurred. He may not recall that there was extensive discussion, and there was a finding, a specific finding, that the placement of the cameras were unobtrusive, they were small, and they blended with their surroundings. That was the finding that was made. The second point is Mr. McGurk is mistaken. The thing that is under the eaves in the front is not an additional security camera. It is an audible police and fire alarm, which has been there for years. It has nothing to do with security cameras. He completely misunderstood it. He's been staring at our house for quite some time. And what I will tell you is the surface closest to his house, that side, is 25 to 26 feet wide and 30 feet high. He's complaining about a 2.5 to 4.5 inch camera. It is totally inconspicuous and cannot be seen. If you want to go through the pictures with us, we can do that. But the point is, he's mistaken on the facts. He's mistaken on what happened. He misrepresented what occurred during the meeting. And Mr. Lazowski will recall that discussion specifically reviewed all of the locations of the cameras, and he looked carefully at each one of them. And Mr. Ramo and Mr. Lazowski both found they were inconspicuous. Go to the one in the back.
At the design root cause.
I think the big thing, Mr. Platt, that I have an issue with is that, is there any way you think you could paint these things to match your siding? Because
No.
I think that
Let me respond to that. We asked the Vector Security people, it's the 4th largest company in the country, and they specifically said these cameras have a mount that warranty that will be voided if they are painted. The camera mounting was done specifically by Vector Security. One of our prime concerns was to make sure that the cameras did not view into anyone else's residence. One of the other concerns was that they provide peripheral perimeter view of our house and property. And the Vector Security professional put in fixed in the best locations for accomplishing that. If you look at these cameras, look at the back view. I think it is, let me show you the back view. They're 2.5 by 2.5 by 4.5 by 2.5. If you look at the one that is down there, there it is, the one you've got highlighted. If you can make that large. This camera is much smaller even than our venting. And you can't tell me that's a conspicuous and disruptive point to the integrity and architectural composition of our house. And I will also tell you, and I'll volunteer this, that Mr. Lazowski raised a point because there was so much hostility coming from Mr. McGurk and others that we should question whether Vector Security would allow us to share the camera views to make sure that the neighbors understood that the views weren't going, looking into their houses. But Vector Security strongly advised us and all their clients not to disclose to any third party any privacy information, including camera views, to anyone. And they said every security company in the country would give similar professional advice to clients. The bottom line is, if you look at, and no other neighbors have ever complained. There have been hundreds of cameras installed, including multi-camera installations with far larger camera mounts. This is exactly inconspicuous to our house, and it fits in with it. And again, we did this because there have been crimes in our neighborhood in Hunters Woods. There were 2 murders. We've had lots of robberies and problems in the neighborhood, just as the prior applicant said. And so we went to the best professionals we could find to do this installation. They advised us these are fixed views. We cannot change the views that they have, which is of the perimeter of our property. And Mr. McGurk is wrong on the facts, and he's wrong in his representation of what occurred during that meeting.
Okay, so I agree that they're small. I think that the big thing is I would love to have a picture from afar and not be able to see it. And that's what, you pointed out your vent for your bathroom. I didn't even notice it was there until you pointed it out.
Right.
Because it's painted the same color as your siding. And
It's
so I know
all
you
the
can't,
same.
I know you can't paint them. I understand. So what I would like to do is, to me, the biggest one that I see as an eyesore personally, and to me, this is what the people see from the street is the front one. For me, it just is. It could have been easily located a little better than that location.
Mr. Wood, I agree it's a little more conspicuous than the others, even though it is small. And can we please go back to that front picture so we can look at it again?
Yeah, because
I agree with you, but I have
that
to
one,
tell
it's on a much smaller section of siding, so it just sticks out a little bit more. It sticks out a little bit more.
We did not pick the location of that. The people from Vector said they want to make that one, even though it blends in a little more conspicuous, as a deterrent against crime. They have found that when the front camera is more conspicuous and it blends in, it does not attract from the architectural integrity of the house. It's small and inconspicuous. It actually is a strengthened deterrent against crime. And that's the reason we put all these cameras in the first place. We were being under a problem of continuing potential crime against our property and us.
Okay, let me go around the room, see if anyone has any questions for you. Mike, did you have any questions?
Oh, sir, you just mentioned that the locations were chosen by your provider, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And these, there was no other additional back and forth. There was no additional discussion of this is where it had to go.
They said that the cameras, in order to do what we wanted, which was to provide the perimeter views, had to be no more than 15 feet above the ground. They told us that. And they said they're going to put them, we told them to put them in the places where they belong. And that's what happened.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Karen, did you have anything?
No.
Jim, did you have anything to add?
I understand the least conspicuous thing, and looking at the front elevation, certainly if it was on the trim, it would be less conspicuous. That's all that I have had. The other ones I agree, because they're on a much larger area, they tend to be less conspicuous.
Yeah, I agree. I think those they're it's shaded. It's on such a large face, like the applicant kind of pointed out, that I tend to agree. I'm not too concerned about the sides and the rear one, but that front one, just whenever I see that picture, it sticks out to me. I would love it to be, there's this picture of the camera being able to be mounted from kind of a ceiling mount. That would be really nice if it was just tucked up right underneath that garage door, overhang there. And you would still have that visual appeal that someone could see the camera. And that way you could at least, still get your viewpoint that you're trying to get, but it would be at least kind of tucked up or hidden away a little bit better than what it is now. My second thought, you could move it up about 6 inches and put it on the trim. Maybe, I think then it still kind of does the same. It still kind of looks the same. I don't know if that really is impactful enough. But
It's certainly less than the 15 feet maximum height that you were just talking about.
yeah, I mean, Mr. Platt, would you be open to moving that front one and keeping the other ones where they are?
Yes, I will talk to Vector about moving that onto the trim up a little bit. Okay?
Okay. I think that would help it just disappear a little bit better, because even though your trim's not white, you know, your trim's a little bit of a cream off-white color. I do still think it would be not as impactful as it is currently.
Michael,
Yeah.
since the application is being reviewed de novo, the affected party still can respond.
Can respond. Okay, so we have registered affected parties as well.
Yes, Mr. McGurk.
Okay. All right. So I need to hear from the affected party since we're hearing this de novo. So Mr. McGurk, for this one, you have 3 minutes to make your affected party statement. You've heard a little bit of our discussion. Your 3 minutes can start now, assuming you're unmuted.
I am, thank you. Can we go to page 34, I believe, is the west view of the camera. I'm sorry, the next, let's try another one. Next one, please. It's the west view. That's the east view. Maybe one more, 38. One more, I apologize. This camera that's facing the west side, if the camera, two things I have to say. Number one, the cameras on the east and west side of the house aren't strictly necessary. There are no ingress points into the house. The windows are at least, if that's 15 feet, or at least higher than 15 feet above the ground level, because the slopes off on each side. So I would contend, one, that they're not necessary. The other one is this particular camera on the west side of the house directly faces the east side of my house. And we have a big picture window, round window over in our kitchen. And when we look out, your eye is immediate. This camera is like in the center of the window from our east side, and is actually very obvious. Granted, it's in a large area, but it's super obvious. There's no vegetation that covers it up. So I would contend that this one is just as obtrusive as the one on the front of the house. I'm not arguing whether Mr. Platt should or should not have cameras. I'm arguing that they're by their nature and their location, particularly the one on the front and the one that affects my property, the one on the west side of the house, are obtrusive. It is in direct line of sight of my kitchen. You know, when you look at the other houses in a 2-mile radius of this particular property, no other cameras are visible, either on the side of the house or on the front of the house. In fact, even when you walk the trails behind these houses, you can't see a camera. They may very well be there, but you can't see them. They're not as obvious as this. That's really it, Mr. Woods, that I wanted to comment on.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had some discussion. Does anybody feel like a motion can be made? No motion by anybody. So, sorry, my little light here fell. My thing is, I think as long as we move that first one, I think it's going to be okay.
Mike,
Yeah.
it's Jim. I know I can't vote, but I could make a motion.
So now, since we are hearing the application de novo, you are allowed to make you are allowed to make a motion and vote as well.
Mike, before you do that, can I just ask if there were other affected parties on this application? I just want to make sure that they're not present. I don't see them, but I just wanted to see if John or Kim Berry or Anthony or Belinda Collins were in attendance of the meeting. If you are, can you please raise your hand? I just wanted to make sure they're not here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Jim, go ahead.
All right, I would make a motion that the camera on the front of the house be raised up so that it is on the trim just below the window. And that the camera that's in the picture currently on the screen be moved over to the left of this picture several feet so that it is on the trim as well. And that would then, take it off center of the line of sight of the neighbor.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
All right. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So to be clear, Jim, you're saying to move the camera over and stick it on basically that eave board. That's kind of the triangle piece there, or just tuck it up on the siding next to that eave board.
On the triangle.
Put it actually on the, okay. So actually put it on that soffit / eave transition board. I don't know what the technical term
Right,
is.
if you just move it straight across the siding over onto the triangle, so it's on the trim.
Right. Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Karen, I didn't hear, you abstained, Karen?
I do.
Okay, Karen abstains. All right, so the motion is 3-0-1. So the motion passes. All right, thank you guys. All right, moving on to application H. Vintage Place Cluster. All right, so this is a deferred decision, correct, Steph?
That is correct. This is a deferred decision from panel meeting.
Okay. So it's a deferred, so we're not having to worry about anybody who was on the panel about voting. So, all right, so is the representative from Vintage Place Cluster on the meeting? All right. So for here, the way we're going to run this, if you guys could present what you guys are doing, and then I know there's some affected parties, so I will go through all of those before we have any discussion, and then we'll come back to you guys as the applicant, and then we'll have a discussion. Okay. So if you guys could go ahead and present, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of a lengthy statement that I think sums up everything that's been going on. Is that cool?
I mean, is it just, I mean, it looks like you guys there was a deferred decision about 12 trees. So that's honestly all I am here to discuss. So 12 tree removals and installation of 12 replacement trees is what I'm looking to go for. Yep.
Great. I think I should probably just read this whole thing.
Okay.
So this has been, an ongoing saga for the better part of a year, and we're hoping to put an end to it tonight. Back in March, we applied to have 23 trees removed and replaced. The DRB has given full approval for replacement of 12 of the trees, but the remaining 11 needed further consideration. In early October, we received a legal notice from the council of one of our residents about the liabilities our trees had opened up our community to. Shortly thereafter, we surveyed our residents to ensure that they still showed overwhelming support for our original proposed plan. We have 122 homes, and we received 52 responses. We asked 2 questions that clearly show what our residents want. One was about liability. When asked about our cluster being open to liability from the trees and responsible should someone sue us, 82.7% of our residents supported moving forward with the entire project. When asked about the replacement plan in its entirety that we proposed back in March, 88.5% of the residents supported the proposed replacement plan. That's clearly overwhelming support. Due to the potential legal liability from the hazardous sidewalks and property damage from the trees, that property damage the trees were causing, we, the Vintage Place Board, removed 19 of the trees in October. Less than a week ago, we had someone trip and fall on one of the sidewalks that had been pushed up by the tree roots. She's here tonight. She's willing to show you, if you want to see, how badly she got hurt and the kind of liability Vintage Place is opened up to. And honestly, the same liability the Reston Association is opened up into till we get our plan approved. Instead of removing all the trees originally on the application, we selected 19 for removal at this time. All 19 of the trees have already been replanted. The reason we didn't remove the remaining trees is twofold. First, they haven't caused structural damage to the ground, and one of our residents found a pesticide injection that should hopefully stop the sap problem that has plagued the trees for over a decade and damaged resident property. We will be testing this treatment in the spring of 2022, and should it work, we will move it using forward. If it doesn't work, you may see us again here next year. With all that being said, it has come to our attention that our contractor made two mistakes that are beyond our control when replacing the trees. First, that their crew mistakenly cut down 3 additional trees not listed on our application. I have a letter from the contractor clearly acknowledging responsibility for those trees. Those 3 trees have also been replanted. Secondly, we found out that our contractor planted European hornbeam trees instead of American hornbeam trees. They're very, very similar trees and will both grow just the same. However, the European hornbeam isn't on Reston Association's list of standard trees. So we're also asking if you feel the trees are going to be similar enough to stay, or if you will require the contractor to come back out and replace them. Despite all of our hard work and merit, some of our residents are unhappy with the project. Although we have overwhelming support from our community and have already completed the majority of the project, some of these residents still want to be heard tonight. For what reason, we're unclear. What's done is done. These same residents have shown up at my doorstep multiple times and have yelled at me quite aggressively a few weeks back. They're the same residents who have secretly recorded our conversations and said things to try to provoke us to yell or scream back. All this goes to show it's kind of a hostile environment over here at Vintage Place from time to time. One of these same residents also went out and demanded that our crew trees stop working while they were on site. And we're here to say that, enough is enough. We've been patient. We've been responsible. We've had overwhelming support from our community. We've spoken to our cluster representative constantly and have consulted with Reston Association every step of the way. We've checked every box, dotted every I, and crossed every T. And to that point, we ask you to please approve our plan in full right now.
Thank you. So to be clear, and staff, correct me if I think this was approved at a panel, so I'm not up to date fully on what was going on. So there were some trees that were approved to be removed, and then there was 12 that were deferred.
That is correct.
Okay, so the 12 deferred trees, did you guys replace? You guys already removed those, even though they weren't approved?
We have removed 12 that were approved, and then of the remaining 11, because I believe there were 23 trees originally on there, we have removed an additional 7. Yes.
Okay, hold on. It's still not adding up. So how many trees did we approve on September 7th, staff?
That approval was for 23 trees. Let me just make sure.
Because I was having trouble finding.
Do you want me to cut? You want me to cut through the 100 pages and kind of give you the cheat sheet?
There were, on May 11, 2021, there were 11 trees that were approved to be removed and replaced with a minimum of a 2-inch caliper. And then there was a deferral for 12 additional trees to be removed, trees number 1 through 4 and 6 through 13.
Okay, so those 12 trees, you guys never came back to get final approval for and remove those without approval. Is that I'm just getting the facts, trying to understand exactly what's happening.
We did come back for approval and you were unable to make a decision, and we did cut a number of those down without approval.
Okay, all right. Just laying. All right, so now I want to hear from the affected parties. I think staff, you have a list of people who registered kind of well in advance, and then there's a couple that registered yesterday, correct? So if you want to go through the list, just a reminder to all affected parties, you have 3 minutes to make your statement. Staff, if it comes to it, staff may mute you after 3 minutes if you're not done speaking. So just as a heads up. All right, so LaShonda, who's first?
Lori Ann Preston.
Hi. I was focusing on trying to save the little leaf lindens because 2 certified arborists said they were healthy. They still were like midlife. The Save a Tree, as Mr. Rowe mentioned, in August had mentioned a soil treatment to decrease the sap and so forth. I believe Mr. Rowe was there on August 11th for part of that meeting to deter the stickiness and so forth. And then also in general, my biggest complaint is the HOA has provided flyers stating drainage, all sorts of issues, and then submits a survey. But the HOA has never given the other side of the story in regards to we could save the little leaf lindens, do the soil treatment, and save the money that could be used for other endeavors in regards to drainage and erosion issues. So my concern is the fact that these survey results are being cited, but they're not, I don't think, accurate in representing the facts of the little leaf lindens and the options that we have. And so that's been part of my complaint, is why didn't we try to save money and save these 8 little leaf lindens? They didn't pose any risk to mailboxes, water, drainage lines, mailboxes, but yet that's been sort of indicated in general when the HOA has talked about the trees. And so I feel like the HOA has sort of misrepresented some of the facts in regards to this project.
Okay, great, thank you. Who do we have next, LaShonda?
Melissa. Melissa, are you on?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me.
We can.
You can, okay. So I presented on my forum, just I objected to the cutting down of the trees. I did not feel that any evidence was presented to the community to show that this was necessary, that there were other ways to mitigate these issues, potentially fixing the sidewalks. I presented pictures of, I live by one of these little leaf lindens that was supposedly one of the sap culprits. I wasn't bothered by the sap. My neighbor who was next to me was not bothered by the sap, yet they cut this tree down anyway. So I don't understand why, if the residents aren't bothered by the sap, why they would even cut down a tree. And then I submitted evidence of photographs where one of my cars that was covered by the sap, that had literally been baking all summer long in this spring and summer long in this sap. And I just washed it right off and there was no damage to my car whatsoever. And I believe I provided the photographs to show those before and after shots of my car being covered by sap. And then, 30 minutes of washing my car, didn't even have to scrub very hard, and the sap was gone with no damage to my paint whatsoever. I agree with Lorianne that the data has been skewed. The data has not been presented to us about these surveys. It's very easy to manipulate data to say whatever you want it to say, especially when you don't present the actual data to the community. We were never presented with any of this data about these surveys and the actual real data. And so you don't know there's no contextualization of this data. So you can pretty much say, oh, this community supported it, and not really know what's behind those numbers, so to speak. So anyway, I absolutely feel that the information has been falsified to the community. I feel like we've been lied to and manipulated. The issue about the drainage, so to speak, is far away from any of these trees. These trees are in between the sidewalks and the pavement, and these drainage issues are way off in other parts of the property. Again, manipulation of information to support, I guess, what I can see is people who just didn't want to wash their cars or something like that. Sidewalks can be fixed without cutting down trees. I mean, what are you going to do when these trees become large again and you have the same problem with roots, affecting sidewalks?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, LaShonda.
We have Michael Epps. Michael Epps, are you on? All right, I don't see Michael Epps. If you're here, can you please raise your hands?
All right, let's go to the next one.
Okay, we have Mark Elser. Is Mark Elser on? Mark, if you're here, could you please raise your hands? Okay, so next we have Kim Biz. Is Kim Biz on? If you are here, please raise your hands. Bonnie Burge. No Bonnie Burge. Okay. Okay, let me see. Alicia F., are you here representing?
I am.
Hi, can you please state your name and your address, please?
Yes, Luis Figueroa, 11455 Heritage Commons Way, Reston. I'm Alicia's husband.
Okay.
All right, so just a reminder, sir, 3 minutes for your statement. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the board's consideration. And my first statement is that I'm absolutely flabbergasted by the conduct of the cluster board president on a recorded video teleconference. The reactions to the concerns expressed by the residents are typical of how this whole process was undertaken. Essentially, behind closed doors, without any kind of transparency or consideration for the residents. In fact, a survey that supposedly was sent out was never received by multiple residents, including us. Statistics that are being quoted, as an engineer, I can tell you 89% of 10 is really not a very big sample number, but I'm going to go ahead and go through my prepared statement. One of the reasons we became Reston residents is Reston's commitment, and could you go back to the little drawing, is Reston's commitment to nature. And we selected Vintage Place because of all the trees and the landscaping. We've lived here for 22 years. As a retired military officer, this is the first house that I've owned in my life. And we're concerned about the process
of removing the trees is setting a bad precedent for our cluster, and we are concerned the Resident Association is not implementing its own guidelines. As you have stated, the trees were removed without DRB approval. Some of the trees cut down by Merrifield, which did a rather unprofessional job, were not highlighted for removal in the map that was circulated by the board. The new trees that were planted are against Reston guidelines. And in fact, they probably are of so poor quality that they're not going to survive the winter. The Design Review Board was informed that removing the trees was an emergency because of some sort of threat of a lawsuit. But nonetheless, none of the residents had the opportunity to go ahead and voice their opinion on whether or not this was a valid threat or not. And as one of my colleagues just mentioned, she was able to wash her car even after being left for a prolonged period. So we're concerned that there was no transparency and time for the community to respond. The surveys that were circulated included questions with multiple choice answers. They essentially concluded that you were either a good neighbor and supported removing the trees, or a neighbor who didn't care about putting the cluster at risk. Those are really not
3 minutes
choices.
are up.
Great, thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, may I just say that this was the.
Is there any other affected parties, LaShonda?
Yes. Is there a Nadine Linton care of Eric Williams on? If you are on, can you please raise your hand? So Legia Sharon, are you on? Alrighty, Rob Tilson. If you're on, could you please raise your hand? And that would be the last one. If I've missed anyone, could you please raise your hand? That's all that I have listed as
There's one
having
person.
statements for.
There's a couple people raising hands.
Okay.
Can we start with Elizabeth, please?
Okay.
Hello, thank you, board, for hearing us this evening. I have been a resident of this community since 2018, and I received the surveys. They were available through email on QR code. There was a board put up at the entrance to our cluster that said that there was a survey out there. So I believe that it was announced in sufficient places for people to hear and take part in. I also think that it's unfortunate that this is a situation that's been going on with these trees going back several years before I was here. So I acknowledge that there was surveys done back in 2011 or 2013, but no actions were taken by the board that was in place at that time. Now here we are 7, 8, 10 years later, and these issues are still with us and have not been addressed. And so I feel like we need to take the steps necessary to keep our community in its best condition so that it gets the best value for the money that we've all invested here. And I believe that the actions that Merrifield took are unfortunate. They're certainly not up to the contract that was signed with them, and therefore Merrifield will have to make restitution in ways that will satisfy Vintage Cluster, but I guess also satisfy the Reston Design Board. But we cannot undo those things. We have to look going forward. And the notion of liability is not being used as a scare tactic that I've seen in the meetings that I've attended for the last year and a half. It is simply an acknowledgement of the very poor condition that the sidewalks and the erosion are contributing to our cluster. And therefore, I recommend that the board approve the petition as it is so that we may move forward and continue to repair the years-long damage and delays that have occurred from time past. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we have one more.
Alexandra.
Alexander. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, guys. I am unfortunately the person that fell because of our uneven sidewalks. My face is showing of that. I hit it pretty hard. I have bandages all over my hands. So obviously the first step was to get rid of the trees. Now we have to figure out the sidewalks to avoid all of this. And unfortunately, after speaking with a attorney, not only is our cluster liable, but so is RA because of the pushing out of this decision. So I hope that everything gets approved tonight. But thank you guys for hosting this. If you want to see up close and personal, this is my eye after falling. That's all.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry that happened. Any other affected parties, LaShonda? It looks like
that's let me go over this list just to make sure no one's here. Is there?
I mean, if nobody raises their hand, then I'm ready to keep going. If you're here and you're an affected party, if you don't raise your hand, I'm moving on because we got a lot of other agenda items to go over. All right, so Jim, do you have any comments on the trees?
The only comment that I have is I guess the species of tree being different than what was specified. Is there any way to resolve that issue? I mean, could there be something submitted from the company that planted the trees, or
Yeah, can we unmute the applicant, please, staff?
Hi, what was the question? Sorry.
So the question was about the trees that were planted were apparently the wrong species by a continent or so, apparently. So
Yeah.
and what exactly is the difference? And has the contractor admitted fault? And are they willing to take responsibility for that, or what's the update on that?
Yeah. So I'm not an arborist. I couldn't tell you the exact differences. They're both hornbeams. They apparently one bud is a little bit different than the other bud. Beyond that, all I know is they're really similar. The contractor has already accepted fault for planting the wrong trees. Obviously, they're a small business. They prefer not to have to come back and replace all of the, those trees and then put new trees in. But if that's what you guys say is going to happen, then that's what you guys say is going to happen, and they're going to have to deal with it. I think that, a nice solution might be to have your head arborist at Reston Association talk to the arborist we've been working with, and maybe they can discuss it and find common ground, but it doesn't really, I guess, affect us one way or the other here.
Okay. Staff, have we talked to anybody in our staff about, is the hornbeam there was a mention of it being an invasive species. Is that true? And
Species.
It's not? Okay. So Karen, you're a pretty good tree expert. Do you know what the difference between these two trees are? Are we talking, is this a red oak versus a white oak situation? Or is it a bigger deal?
I don't know anything about the ones that are not native. So.
Okay. But this isn't a native species regardless. And was the hornbeam the tree we approved for the 11 that were approved? The hornbeam was the tree that was approved, the American hornbeam?
So we are going to use it for all of the trees. And yes, you did approve it. And yes, an American hornbeam is on Reston Association's list.
Okay, as native species.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Karen, did you have any questions actually while we're going?
So I'm a little bit, there seems to be a lot of history to this, and I'm not really quite sure what we've honed this down to for tonight. Is it the 12 trees?
Yeah, so
Whether or
what
not
I
they
see
take down
is the 12
12
tree, yes, the 12 trees that have already been removed. They're asking for approval for those 12 trees. And for the approval of the 12 replacement trees that they are proposing, which they've already been planted, called a European hornbeam.
Okay.
Just to be clear, we didn't remove all 23 trees. We removed 19 and we left 4.
Did you take out
But you weren't supposed to remove any of that remaining 12 that the decision was deferred on.
Right.
So let's be clear on what was
Okay.
actually approved
So
previously.
seven of the 12 were removed. So there's 5 that are remaining. There's 7 that have been removed that were not approved, and then there was 11 that were removed that were already approved in the previous decision. If that makes sense, Karen.
Oh, I'm dizzy. What about let's see, they're the trees that don't really matter that much. There was like 3 of them in that, somewhere in that business.
The pear trees?
Yes. Are those gone?
They are gone. And on the last time we met with Reston Association, they had essentially voiced their approval for those, but wanted to wait to make a decision on all the remaining trees and not just single out an additional 4 trees.
Okay. So I think that taking out those 4 were the right thing to do. And I'm sorry that the trees have been such a difficult situation, but I guess my main concern is you've planted all these new trees. The things that I heard from the arborist assessment, the certified arborists, that they said about what they saw was wrong with them is avoidable. It's all avoidable, but they have to be taken care of on a regular basis. And piling up a whole pile of mulch on top of the base of the tree is very bad practice. And so I'm hoping that you can learn more about how to take the care of the trees that you've now planted in better than the other ones.
We agree.
Anything else, Karen?
No.
Mike?
Oh, I saw in a bunch of the correspondence in here, and maybe I missed it in the significant number of pages here, but I didn't see a replanting plan. I saw the removal plan a few times in there, and perhaps staff has seen it and it's just not something I can put my hands on. But I know our previous correspondence indicated that we were, as a board, looking for where the replanting was going to occur. Has that been prepared so far?
Are you asking the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I believe the replanting plan was part of our original application, and all the trees have already been replanted, and they've already been replanted with that hornbeam of a minimum of a 2-inch caliper. Most of the trees are, from what I understand, between 10 to 12 feet.
I'm with you. I understand that. I was just trying to get to, I mean, I've flipped through this thing a couple times, so I'm trying to understand where we put them back in.
Yeah, it's thick.
So is it page 94, staff? Could you flip to that? Is that where the new ones went back in? Those are the removals
They went back in the exact same spot.
in the exact same spot. Okay.
Yeah, within 2 to 3 feet.
And all the stumps were ground from the old trees all the way down below grade.
All of the stumps were ground out completely. We have a warranty on the trees, you know, from the contractor. They do still need to finish removing all of the roots. They haven't finished all of the roots yet, and they're going to be lifting up the sidewalks as well that are the problematic sidewalks that one of our members, our residents, tripped over, as you saw, unfortunately.
Mike, did you have anything else?
No, sir.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously the trees are gone. There's new trees in. They may or may not be native species, it sounds like, which is unfortunate because it's a little bit opposite than what we had approved on that landscape. I think, you know, ultimately, you know, it's disappointing. There was 12 deferred. The fact that you guys took action on them without that approval, you know, you guys keep bringing up legalness and legal liability and whatnot, but you know, you guys directly disobeyed kind of what we had deferred. So I don't know to what extent. I'm sure Tony is on tonight and can kind of speak to kind of RA's liability in that sense. If anyone wants to talk to him about it offline, I'm sure he can give some clarification on that. But the trees are gone. I do think that having a non-native species is going to be an issue. I think that the American hornbeam, why that necessarily is what's being promoted. I mean, that's still going to grow to be a 50, 60 foot tree. I don't get why you guys think that's going to do anything different than what you removed. Except for the fact that it's only, you know, it's just a deciduous tree. Maybe it doesn't have any sap.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, just 1 second. And then with the sidewalk, I mean, if the sidewalks were a true concern, you guys could have grinded those like, you know, probably 60, 70 other clusters have to do. They grind the upper raised edges, and it happens all the time. And that would have been the first course of action. And then we could have talked about trees if safety truly was the concern.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, let's get away from addressing any sort of liability and statements like that. We are where we are. The DOE needs to approve this application as it's been retained, but arguing the merits of what could or could not make it safe is not appropriate in this conversation.
Understood. So I guess what I would like to do is, you know, the trees are gone, so you know we can't deny the approval because there are 5 trees remaining. Is that accurate? And those were not removed, and those are still in place. And are those, if we go to the map, what tree numbers are those that were not removed? Are they listed on this application here?
They are. It's, I believe, 13, 12, and 10 and 8.
13, 12, 10, 8. So that's 4 trees. Is there a 5th one?
No.
So there's 4 trees that haven't been removed, not
Correct.
5. Okay. So there's been 11 removed, 11 removed that were approved, 7 removed that were not approved, that were deferred, and then 4 that are still not removed. Okay. So what I would like, I think personally, I think we should try to get the native species that was originally approved back in here. Because I mean, I want a tree to be able to succeed in the environment that it was, you know, kind of created for. So does anybody else have any other thoughts on kind of, obviously the trees are gone. I think those 4 trees that are remaining, is there any arborist statement that says why those need to be removed other than, because those around sidewalks as well, or are they they're along Heritage Common?
They're on parking islands. And the reason, like I said, the reason we didn't remove those was all the other trees that we removed were either dead or they were raising the sidewalks and causing hazards and starting to affect curbs and starting to affect the drainage and stuff like that. So the ones remaining, we just trimmed them, and we aggressively trimmed them because what we're hoping to do is to inject these, in the spring. By trimming them, the roots don't need to grow so big. And because the trees were neglected for so many years, they had these same problems with these trees 10 years ago, and nobody did anything about it. There were dead trees in the cluster. And so 10 years ago, they had these exact same problems. So we're pruning them, and hopefully that'll solve, between that and the injection, hopefully it'll solve the issue. And by keeping them trimmed and all the maintenance that should have been done for 10 years, they should not overgrow to the point where we have to do this again.
Okay.
We hope.
So let's keep those 4 trees as is. To me, I think you guys have a plan for them laid out. Let's keep and see how they do over the next year or two with this new plan. Let's keep them in place. For the 7 that were removed, beyond that 7, it might have been 8, because to me there was 23 and there was 11 approved and 12 deferred. So it's either 7 or 8. Those I assume were the ones along Vintage Place, 14 through 23, or
they were. I'd have to pull the map back up. You have the map.
Staff, you go to slide 38. Yeah, right there.
So it was 14 through 23, 6, 7, 1, 4, 3, 2, 9, and 11.
Those were all the ones that were removed. Do you know which ones were the deferred options?
Yes. So the red and blue color marked were the deferred options.
Okay,
the
so
maple,
green were good to go from what we approved, and then those were cut, ground, and trees have been replaced, but they're the wrong tree, correct? They're the European versus the American.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So everybody understand basically where we're at. Does anyone have a motion that they want to put on the table?
Michael, go ahead. If somebody was about to, I was going to ask for a clarification from you, Michael. I think the plan was here. All we're doing here is approving that which has already been removed, correct?
I think we're approving with the, we issue the approval with the caveat that we're only approving because it's an existing condition and we have no option.
But we are talking about the ones that need to be American.
Correct. Yeah. I think they're based on my limited research, and unless they can provide from what I've seen, there's been a couple of arborist statements in the application that say the European is not going to do well in its environment. That to me, originally we approved an American. That to me is what needs to be installed per our approval.
So that's part of the motion.
Correct. Well, there is no motion yet, but yes, we need to make a motion. Yeah, correct.
One way or another.
Correct. So, I mean, I'm happy to make a motion if I can word it. So I'll motion to approve the existing tree removals, and I will motion to keep the 4 remaining trees that have not been removed yet and are planned for restoration or planned medical upkeep, and I will stand firm that the tree replacements need to be American hornbeams, not European hornbeams, and if European hornbeams have been installed, that they need to be removed and American hornbeams need to be installed in their place.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Michael, do you want to put a timeline for compliance?
Well, we're about to enter winter, so I don't think planting a tree right now would do well. So I think, let's give them 180 days to rectify any wrong trees. That'll give them until early spring or middle of spring next year, and that'll be perfect time to plant some trees where they can get some good water on them. So we'll add to the motion 180 days for compliance. Karen, you seconded the motion?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that amendment of 180 days? All right.
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. All right, thank you guys. All right, moving on to Arbor Glen Cluster. Arbor Glen.
Do we have Susan Collier?
Yes. Ooh, maybe mute yours, Ro.
Well, yeah, if you guys have if you have two computers
We
in
have
the room, yeah, make sure to mute one of those.
Yeah, mute.
Did you mute it?
I can't.
A little technical difficulty. All right. Did you guys get the one muted, Susan?
It doesn't sound like it. Turn it off or something then.
Oh yeah. No, don't just mute yourself. He needs to turn down the volume on his computer.
Oh, turn it down.
Yeah.
I sound like I'm talking to
anything
myself.
I say is going to echo like I'm
Okay.
in the Swiss Alps yodeling. So, except with a lot screechier
right.
pitch. Yep. All right. So Susan, go ahead. Are
Yeah,
you
I
the
think so,
representative
yeah.
for Arbor Glen?
I'm on.
Yep, you're on. So we deferred a decision about some
Hello?
window shutters. Yeah, can you hear me? You need to turn up your sound, Susan.
Where's my volume?
Mute.
No. I'm not on mute.
Yeah, you're not muted.
No, you need to turn up your sound, Susan.
Oh, wait a minute here. No, that's on.
All right, Susan, can you hear me?
Do you want to use mine? Can you hear me? No?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay.
Okay, you can hear us? Okay. right.
Yeah, I can
All right, so
now.
are you the representative for Arbor Glen, I'm assuming?
I'm one of them, yes.
All right, great. So we deferred a decision on some window shutters. So we are now reviewing it at a full board. So if you would present it to us, because I don't believe, I don't know if any of us heard this before.
No.
So
two of them.
I'll start from the beginning.
Great.
Okay, so yeah, I'm representing the board of directors for Arbor Glen Cluster and 30 of the homeowners who are in favor of our request to have the shutters made optional. I gotta turn this down a little bit. Okay. Can you, I guess they can still hear me. We have, well, there's a total of 44 homes in Arbor Glen. And right now the shutters that there's some houses with shutters, there's houses without shutters. And it's kind of random throughout. Now I provided those 3 pictures just to show one particular model, how, they differ just even in the same model. I mean, one has 5 shutters on the side of the house. Another one has 3. They're all the same model. And then another one might have 4. There's another picture, I think. Yes, that one has 4 windows with shutters. And you can see that from different perspectives, you don't necessarily see shutters, and not all the windows have shutters on them. So we sent out, I did a survey of homeowners and went out to get feedback from people as to whether or not they would be okay with having shutters optional. And 30 of them replied, and they were 4 optional. I think there was a total of 5 who wanted to keep shutters, and the other 9 never responded at all. But we're not talking about eliminating shutters. We just want to make them optional. Arbor Wood, which is a twin neighborhood of ours, built by Miller and Smith, in their standards, they have shutters as optional. And our standards really don't say anything in there about whether or not shutters are even required. It only indicates what color that the shutters, it says what colors for the vinyl shutters. And it also says that shutters have to be the same color as the front doors and the garage doors. The sales thing I provided in there back at the beginning, you're down all the way through all these pictures, showed, you know, some people had comments that Arbor Wood wasn't up to the same standards as ours, but Arbor Wood, as far as sales have gone, have sold for much higher than ours. I mean, they had 2 sales in there, and one was $719 and one was $705. So people aren't turned off by Arbor Wood. I don't know what is there.
Well, I think we get what the point is. I get what you guys are going for. I know there's affected parties on, so we'll come back and have a conversation with you.
Okay.
But I need to just go through the affected party list, and then we can discuss kind of what we think as a board. Okay. All right. So, LaShonda, you have a list of some people for this one.
Okay, do we have Ken or Caroline Countaway?
And just to remind the affected parties, you have 3 minutes to speak on your status as an affected party, and staff will mute you if you go beyond that. So
we're here.
All right, great. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Hi. Yep. So go ahead and state your affected party status.
So we're new to Reston, 2 years. A year and a half of that 2 years we have spent looking for a house here in Reston. We scoured the whole town, and we settled on the zip code. We narrowed in on many neighborhoods in the zip code, Arborwood being one of them. And at no time did the shutters ever become a deciding factor in whether we were going to buy in any of these communities. We settled on Arbor Glen because of the nature of the community, the location, and frankly, the design of the house. It was exactly what we were looking for. Let's move forward. We purchased the house in June. We move in August. We have a lot of work to do to the exterior of the home. The home hasn't been painted for a while. It needed a lot of wood rot removed. Our painter comes in, we spend thousands of dollars on having all this work done. We love what they've done. They've taken the shutters down. We were contemplating painting them. To be honest, we have 13 windows. We only have 3 windows with shutters. It was very random. We paid $650,000 for the home, and we have plastic shutters that they want us to put back up on thousands of dollars that we just spent on cedar siding. Cedar siding that was developed in 1987 has to be maintained. It's very hard to get cedar siding right now, and the cost of it has escalated. We talked to our painter. The side of our house that has the shutters also has trees that we don't get any sun. Our homes are fairly dark. You put something against a cedar siding that traps moisture, regardless if you're painting every 2 or 3 years, you're going to get rot. So we have not put our shutters back up. We hope not to put our shutters back up after spending this money. Also, the integrity of the home, the siding, the detail, the dental detailing on the exterior of our home is more emphasized because we don't have these shutters, because it's very random. My point though, in all of our search through Reston for a home, shutters was never a deciding factor in whether we were going to buy in a community or not. We actually were quite surprised when we moved here that they weren't already random, because we looked in Arborwood and almost offered on one of the homes there, and we already thought they were random, so. All right, did I get muted?
Great, thank you. I don't think so, but I think, is there 3 minutes up, Steph?
Well, it doesn't matter, but my
Yes,
point
now,
is.
yes, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, next.
Do we have Gary or Melda? Boyd?
Yes, I'm here.
We're both here.
Great, if you guys could start your 3-minute statement.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Gary Boyd, a past Arbor Glen Board president and a member of the first board that oversaw the transition of the community from Miller and Smith to Arbor Glen. Thus, I'm very familiar with the Arbor Glen from its inception. As you know, Arbor Glen was designed by the Martin organization and built by Miller and Smith to be 44 Z-lot townhouses, the first Z-lot townhomes built in Virginia. 3 models, colonial in style, which is prevalent in Northern Virginia, made of cedar siding. Miller and Smith incorporated a number of classic colonial features in Arbor Glen. These include multi-pane windows, exterior dental molding, shutters, which were originally applied to 84% of the homes on designated windows, pediments and medallions on certain windows. Miller and Smith's original intent for Arbor Glen to be colonial in style is well documented in publications of the time, which include Miller and Smith promotional materials, 2 articles in local newspapers, and an article in the Reston Realtor Alert published by Reston Land Corporation, in which it noted that Arbor Glen won a design award. Allow me to quote from 2 of these articles. Miller and Smith contracted with the Martin organization to design an upscale center hall colonial townhouse with attached garages. This is from the Journal, December 1986. The next quote, their cedar-sided colonial style exteriors are adorned with fresh white trim and shuttered multi-pane windows. This is from the Times, 1987. Miller and Smith installed shutters in a definite and deliberate pattern with nearly mathematical precision. The model of home and the home's placement in its row of homes determined the number of shutters and their placement. The Juniper model is unusual in that if it is an interior unit, it was built with no shutters at all. If a Juniper is an end unit, it was built with 3 sets of shutters on the upper 3 windows on the side of the house where the garage is located. Currently, a total of 26 pairs of shutters are missing from a total of 10 homes. This is in figures 1A, 4A, and 4B in the Boyd submission. For most of the past 34 years, most homes have retained their shutters. As homeowners have removed their shutters, the appearance of the neighborhood has begun to change, not for the better. When a neighborhood allows personal taste to have priority relative to the standards of the neighborhood overall, the neighborhood loses its coherence and beauty. Retaining shutters on Arbor Glen homes should not be optional on homes that originally had shutters, and the shutters that have been removed ought to be replaced. We asked the design board to reject the Arbor Glen Cluster Board's proposal to make window shutters optional in Arbor Glen. We also request that the design review board exercise its authority to ensure that the missing shutters are replaced in Arbor Glen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Who do we have next, LaShonda? LaShonda, you're muted. LaShonda, you're muted. That's why nobody's responding, not because they're not here.
Oops. We have William.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Go ahead and
Yes.
start your 3 minutes.
Thank you. To clear up one matter, someone submitted a statement that at the first meeting, Arborwood, the neighborhood down the street, was described as lacking in appeal. If that's a reference to my comments, I am not certain that that is accurate. However, with respect to the merits of this application, the original basis for this application, i.e. the damage to fiber cement siding, has been shown to be inaccurate, and shutters may be hung on fiber cement siding without damage. The recent letter campaign by the board produced 14 letters out of 44 members. These letters are simply an extension of the original, quote, survey conducted by the board and is subject to the same flaw, namely bias. It is my understanding that the email sent by the board or another individual only to selected homeowners requesting letters to be sent to Reston Association did not present both sides of the issue, and therefore any responses were based on the same information in the original biased emails, which also rendered the survey unreliable. Throughout this process, the board has continuously made general statements without any source of factual support. Note, for example, the sweeping comments on the low quality of 1980s construction. Miller and Smith was a reputable builder. An applicant, especially a board of directors which represents all homeowners in the cluster, should be held to a standard of a good faith attempt to assure a fully informed and balanced hearing before the DRB. Here, the board's representation of its members has been one-sided, and at times, the information it has submitted has been inaccurate or incomplete. At the end of the initial hearing and in its written decision dated November 2nd, 2021, the DRB specifically urged the applicant to, quote, provide documentation, including drawings of the builder original intent of the shutter placements and how it was implemented. The board has provided little or no such documentation, possibly because the documentation does not support their position. By contrast, the affected party statement opposing the change filed by the Boyds presented extensive evidence from several sources of the builder's original design and intent. The DRB also encouraged the applicant to restudy and submit a less random proposal. The board has ignored the suggestion and has apparently chosen to stick to an all or nothing approach. In an application such as this, when seeking to benefit a few owners with an arbitrary change, it should be considered whether that change is at the same time taking something significant away from the homeowners or from other homeowners. As a 30-plus year resident of Reston, an original owner of our Aubrey Glen townhouse, and the first president of the Aubrey Glen Cluster Board, it has been my impression that one role of the DRB is to preserve the integrity of the residential communities and to be cautious as to attempts to make architectural changes to communities which are arbitrary and have the potential to do harm to aesthetics. Accordingly, we request that the application be denied and that the existing rules and guidelines for shutters be enforced.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you, William.
Is there
next?
Lisa Hoffner? Andrea Lawrence?
Here, I found the mute button. I'm sorry, this is Lisa Hoffner.
Hi, Lisa.
Apologies.
All right. Go ahead and start your 3 minutes, please.
So my name is Lisa Huffner. I've been living in Arbor Glen for about 21 years. I was on the board of the Cluster Association for approximately 11 years, and some of those years were as president. Arbor Glen is indeed a beautiful neighborhood, largely due to the rigor that previous boards and homeowners have exercised to maintain the standards. Shutters are not randomly placed in this neighborhood. They are placed based on a specific pattern and designed with each model based on their location within the row that they're in. Strategically placed, the shutters do add aesthetics and character to the neighborhood, and they support they're in alignment with the architecture of the Z-Line townhomes. In fact, the original pops color that were designed by the builder were in alignment with the Reston Association design standards. I put 4 quotes in my presentation from the last board meeting about design standards. So the Reston requires, these are the design standards from May 1st of 2003 that are on the website, page 1. The standards of architecture design, which respect the aesthetic integrity of the community, complement its existing architecture and natural features, and promote the unique character of the neighborhoods. That's one thing that the shutters do as they were designed. The second thing is the shutters are design details that integrate visually with the architecture of the buildings. The third quote is that if the shutters or wide window trim are provided on the front of residential buildings, they are required on side and or rear elevations and as well. And I want to emphasize that's and or, not a designation that it has to be on every window. And the fourth one is that doors and windows shall be consistent in proportion, detailing, and style, and compatible with the architectural character of the building. Those are, again, all design Reston standards. The placement of the windows is not meant to be on every window. Indeed, if the shutters were on every window, it would be very cluttered and kind of ruin the aesthetics of the neighborhood. If we make shutters optional, eventually I believe that all the shutters would disappear. And I believe that would leave a more sterile look to the neighborhood and not necessarily the more modern look that people are thinking that they're going to provide. We have not had a significant issue. As I said, I was on the board for 11 years. We have not had a significant issue with missing shutters from the original design until we got the DRB approval on January 9th of 2020 for approving hardy board replacements for the cedar siding. One of the stipulations that a DRB put on that approval to get hardy board was the stipulation approval was that the configuration, profile, and exposure shall match the existing.
The 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Who's next?
Next, is there Andrea Lawrence? Linda Cotton? Patricia Hayes? Mark Long? Marlena Kingston? Robbie Nelson? I thought I saw Nancy McCormick.
Yes.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi. All right, your 3 minutes as affected party starts now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm waiting about the Arbor Glen.
Yep, that's what we're on right now. We're going through the affected parties in Europe.
I had written a note about it, but I didn't realize I was going to talk, but so I'm a little unprepared.
You don't have to talk unless you want to.
Oh, okay. So there's my note, and I just I support the board's proposal just because it's giving us an option. It's not there's nothing in our bylaws now that say anything about our shutters, and so this is just giving us the option to have what we keep what we have versus or not have them at all. And I just don't think that's it seems like a very obvious thing to do. And so, and it fits the design of our houses. So I just support our board of directors on this issue.
Great, thank you.
Is there Lisbeth Bernecki? Joanne or Donald Clark? Dennis Rich? Dennis?
Denise.
Denise, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just will go on record
There's that again.
that I she's on my.
How do I turn the volume?
Let her on this one.
Okay.
Hold on, Denise. We can't quite hear you. Hold on. Staff, you guys unmute Denise. Denise's
She's being unmuted now.
Volume.
All right, Denise, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm just gonna make it short. I support this request to make shutters optional. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Roe Buchanan.
Okay, am I unmuted? And we have volume?
Dr. Rowe?
We're good? Okay. I'm Roe Buchanan. I'm the current board president of Arbor Glen, and I'm as original as they come. My wife and I bought in Arbor Glen pre-construction, and then moved in the first day these were open, June 1st, 1987. And I also, in a sense, have no dog in this fight because I'm one of the homes, the Juniper models, that never had shutters on any window ever. So I don't have a personal stake in this, but it does seem to me that while it's important to have a splash of color in the neighborhood, that's adequately provided by the most prominent feature of the design, which is the garage door. The garages protrude forward of the homes, and those are painted in those certain colors. So I think we got plenty of color in the cluster. And I would say the current standard you could interpret as requiring, I don't know, it doesn't say anything about whether shutters are there or not. All it says is the shutters have to have a color that matches the garage door and front door. And so I don't really see adding a line saying that the presence or absence of shutters is optional is a major change. But as I say, I don't have a personal stake, but I think making the shutters optional is a sensible standard.
Great, thank you.
That's all we have.
Great. If there's anybody else here, raise your hand. I just want to make sure I go through all these now. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak? All right, I don't see anybody. All right, so if you could unmute the applicant, I believe it was. So I guess what my biggest question is, and I guess I'll go around the room after I ask this, is how in the world do you guys know who has shutters and who doesn't? Because your cluster standards don't, I mean, there's no really thing that says a certain model is required to have shutters and on what windows. How do you guys keep track?
Well, we're not.
Where's the volume?
Michael, if I may, so I believe Karen and I saw this previously, and we were the ones who deferred it to the full board. And we had made a request during that meeting specifically that we dust off and find the original drawings, renderings, plans, etc., so that we could discuss this, with the original intent, because I don't believe the designer's intent was ever to construct a new development and have the shutters be optional or random in nature. And I believe they're provided some additional details here indicating that specific units had a very specific placement of shutters to accomplish the design intent that we were all looking for here. So I don't think in any way, shape, or form was the intention here for people to, when they upgraded the materials, as it has happened over the years, for shutters to just go the way of the dodo. I mean,
Agreed, but you're saying that that information was provided or it's not? Because I don't.
it wasn't in the
see it.
original, but some of the affected parties, I believe, did include some additional renderings like we're seeing in here.
There are things that Aaron put in the packet.
Okay.
There was a drawing at the, an artist rendering or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing that I saw that kind of referenced original shutters versus not shutters was the affected party statement, I believe, from the Boyds that laid out what models had what. And I'm just curious about where
keep going.
That information came from.
I believe it's the first couple of pages.
I thought it was at the very end. You had it up there once.
29.
No, there's keep.
Staff, I'd like to recognize and rehear from the Boyds real quick because they had a thorough kind of grasp on the question I'm asking. Could you guys unmute them real quick so I could ask them where they obtained this information from?
Okay, we, Melda Boyd here, Gary's here too. We conducted a thorough study of every single house in Arbor Glen, and we determined what the pattern is. We also know which houses had shutters before and which ones took them off. If you look at this document right there, it's now page 32. It wasn't 32 when we started, but it's page 32. And we have by address the exact model of house. This cracks the code. This is the pattern that Miller and Smith started with. If you had a cypress and it's an interior to the row, it has one set of shutters under the box window. If you have a cypress and it's in an end unit, you have 3 sets of shutters over your, you've got four sets of shutters, 1 under the box window and 3 on the side of the house. If you have juniper, similarly, if you're inside the row, no shutters. If you're an end unit, you have 3 sets of shutters. If you're a laurel, you have 5 sets of shutters, and they are placed in the same place everywhere except for one house that the I think it was either Susan or Rowe brought out, that there is one house that has 5 sets of, it's a laurel. All the laurels have all their shutters, but one laurel had their siding replaced, and the contractor put the small set of shutters on the wrong window. A simple little note to the homeowner having him move those shutters from the garage to over the front door will take care of the problem. Well, we'll take care of the problem over the front entrance. Anyway, okay, that's where we got the data. We studied it. We determined what the pattern was, and it has been, it's proven to be true in every single case. And so that table shows you exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect.
That's not the case, because the laurel, some of them, there's one that has 3 windows with shutters. The other ones haven't been removed. There could never be a shutter there because of the way it was built.
So I guess what I'm looking for is, I wish there was just a little bit more. I think what the Boyds put together is almost exactly what I'm looking for.
But there isn't anything that really exists that's anywhere that shows it in concrete. I have blueprint drawings and it doesn't even show them. This one even has, if you look at the one that has sort of the red door in the middle, the shutter isn't even on it shows that on the different window there on the side, and it only has 1 shutter. The shutter on some of them is on the second window. So it is random no matter what.
It's not,
well,
no, it's not random.
I can't imagine it's random. Yeah, no. I can't imagine it's random.
That's not the case.
I think they're clearly, they found some sort of consistency. What we're trying to decide is whether because optional doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's just going to go and remove their shutter. So
No, it does
I don't,
not.
I don't see, I think the people, you know, who don't want to put up shutters, I personally, you know, like the fact that vinyl shutters are approved, you know, I think vinyl shutters look very fake. I would prefer the, you know, the true wood, or now Hardy makes a good alternative shutter that I would prefer would be more of a standard versus the vinyl. But, you know, that is maybe up for another discussion. Karen, did you have anything to add?
No, I've just been puzzling over this because it shouldn't be to go back and recreate the original to the T and keep it that way is, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, I find that tricky as well. I mean, I don't even know how they keep track. I mean, does RA, like, have homeowners been cited for not having shutters when they go to resell? I mean, how do we even enforce it?
Not necessarily.
You can take them off later.
Well, that's my question. Is currently the standard, and staff, you could correct me if I'm wrong, the cluster standard itself right now does not mandate that the houses that had shutters to maintain shutters. It basically just says if you have shutters that they need to be the same color as your door. And then they have a material, but it doesn't say specifically what windows need shutters, and conceivably somebody could put shutters on a window that doesn't necessarily originally have shutters, and we may not know.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't specify in the standard that you know, shutters are mandatory. They are optional. And these drawings and the pictures that we're looking at, that's like it came out of like historical information from RA. So these are pictures that show houses with shutters, some without, as well as like, this is probably in a builder original drawing that shows it. And then we have the drawing here.
It's tough to trust a little, you know, infographic from a sales brochure, because you know, who knows if the artist knew exactly what the intent was. That's a little, but I like looking at these pictures. You know, I mean,
and the blueprints don't show anything.
Yeah, that's what's tricky. And it's not like all single, you know, it'd be easy if every single double hung had a shutter. I just, even though I feel like the shutters are important, I don't know how we enforce it. You know what I mean? There's just, how do we know which, you know, to me, any single double hung window could have shutters on it, right? And it appears that it always is a single double hung window that has the shutters, which makes sense because that's how shutters work. They can only work on single windows. But then that rule doesn't apply to every single double hung window, because there's some models that have double hung windows. Like I'm looking at slide 49. Staff, you go to slide 49 real quick. You know, like that single double hung window under the bump out has shutters, but then the single double hung directly to the right there doesn't have shutters, right? And to me, I almost would have put shutters on that one, but I think it's too close maybe to the corner. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation. Jim, did you have any thought on the shutters?
I mean, it does enhance some of these pictures that we're looking at. However, isn't our position to enforce the cluster standard?
Yeah, and I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to update the cluster standard to clearly say it's optional for shutters, for homes that had shutters.
And is that unanimous within their cluster?
Yes.
Well, I don't think I think unanimous is probably a strong word. They're claiming it's the majority, which is a little bit different than unanimous. But yes.
That's today. What about tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. In 5 years, everyone might say differently. But my point is, how do you even, you know, let's say you were a unit, just curious, pose this to you, Susan. If you were a unit that had no shutters originally, and you said, I love shutters, I want to put shutters on my house, right? What stops that person from putting shutters up on their house?
I don't know anybody who would want to put up shutters today anyway.
Well, right, but that's your personal opinion, right?
Right,
What I'm saying
right.
is
Just-
somebody could put up shutters though, is my extent. So what I would almost say is we need to, if we do say shutters are optional, I think we need to limit what shutters go to what type of window. Like, to me, they need to go to single double hung windows only. They can't go to any of the other types of windows, because somebody could have a picture window and think that it might look good to put shutters on it, but that's never how shutters are intended to work. So I want to make sure that if we do this, that we clean up the standard to make sure that there's nobody that, you know, accidentally puts shutters on a face that doesn't, you know, necessarily need it.
Okay, so we could define each house as to if somebody wanted shutters, what windows they would go on.
I mean, to me, I could just say single double hung windows. To me, could get the shutters.
Okay.
I have a question. What if we have shutters already up on single or double hung windows?
Pardon? Oh, we already have them up?
No, I'm wondering, what if we come across that situation?
Well, there are no shutters. There shouldn't be any, from what I've seen on the pictures, there's no shutters on any window other than double hung windows.
Michael, the other way you could approach this is to take the documentation that the Boyds have put together, which I guess is for the entire cluster, and if people were choosing to put them back up, to follow that as a guide rather than, you know, the double hung, you know, single window approach.
Yeah, I guess what's tricky about that is it doesn't say exactly what windows, you know, it just says 5. It just has 5 original pairs of shutters. It doesn't say what 5 windows that was, or it says 3 original pairs of shutters, but it doesn't say what 3 windows.
Mr. Chair, may I be heard?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
It is not the job of this design review board to create cluster standards for the cluster. It is the obligation of the cluster to bring it to this board for this board to adjust. So if this board does not have sufficient information to come up with a decision, then the appropriate remedy would either be to A, deny the current matter, or B, defer until such time as sufficient evidence to this board. You guys are working too hard.
I like to be helpful, Tony. I like to be helpful, man. You know.
I understand, but
That's what we're trained to do.
you can only do what you can do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think then if that is, you know, what we're being advised to do, which I tend to agree with, I think what we need is just, if you guys do want to go with this, which I think aesthetically, I think it's important that if the shutters are employed, that, you know, somebody doesn't just take down, what if somebody just took down, like, there's a face that has 4 windows, if they just take down a set of shutters, then technically they're still in compliance, but it would look funny, right? So I think you guys need to, what I'm going to do is I'll motion to defer the application to provide more information on the specific shutter patterns that are in place. And I would use the Boyd's document as a great starting point, but we need to have a little bit more information on which windows get those shutters.
Okay.
And then provide that information kind of laid out, so people, if they do want to do shutters, they clearly have a way, and the standard is clear to show us how that's done. And if someone doesn't want to do shutters, then they know that, you know, that is an option as well, if that's what you guys as a cluster want to do as a decision. But I think right now we just don't have quite enough information to make a determination on the standard being updated. So that's my motion. Hold on real quick. So that's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion for the board members? All right, so everyone in favor of the motion, say.
Can you
go ahead?
Do that one more time?
So basically my motion is to defer to once again ask for the same information almost that you guys asked for in the first place, was to get more information on where these shutters are, what windows they're going on, and if they are going to be optional, what is the requirement for if they are provided versus what if they are not provided. I mean, clearly if they're not provided, it's easy, right? But if they are provided, there needs to be stipulations to where they're provided And to me, I would just lay out what the existing, situation is, which is what the Boyds had offered. Because I don't want it to be piecemealed where there's only like one set of shutters left versus none. So I think that's the key that needs to be provided to us, and then we can make a determination. So, go ahead, Karen.
Go ahead.
No, I just was saying that's the motion. Do you understand it?
Yeah, and I think the idea is a very general one in a way. Then I'm only going to try and say it the way I see it. That I think I understand what you're trying to get at, is that you have, it's like a certain basic qualities to follow, or particular things like the windows to call and the oh Christ, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So if you could apply perhaps certain characteristically organized features, you could apply them to not necessarily the way they were before, but whoever wants to use them and use them correctly.
Correct. Yeah, and I think correct and correctly would be what was done originally for that model of home. So I think that's where that's where the Boyd's document would come in handy. Use that. Have a picture. I'm sure there's at least one house of each model that is correct in its shutters remaining. Just take a picture of it, put it and say, this is the shutter pattern you use if you want to keep shutters. And if you don't want to have shutters, then you don't have to, but here is where kind of it sits at. So that's the motion in this, in the second. So let's take a vote on it.
And then can I just ask one other question about that?
Yep.
So it's the shutters would be optional.
Well, no, we're not. I'm deferring the decision. They need to, like what Tony was saying, they need to provide to us the information to then make a decision the next meeting.
Okay, yeah,
so
when I was told the last time is that you couldn't do anything except what they had then, and that's not correct. So
yeah, and so what I'm hoping is next time they'll provide to us all the information that I'm asking for, and then that way we then can vote on whether the shutters then can become optional.
Third, fourth, whatever.
So all right, so all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so the motion passes 4-0. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you next month then with that information. All right, going on to Tumble Tree, 2360 Tumble Tree.
Tumble Tree. The application was reviewed first at the October 19th full board meeting. This was an in concept.
And now the in concept has not been, it's not been appealed. They're just, they're coming back for final approval.
Yeah, they had a couple of things that they needed to bring back to the board for reevaluation.
Gotcha. Is the applicant here?
We are. Can you hear us?
Great. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yep. So if you guys, we're obviously familiar with this project, but if you guys could walk us through kind of the changes that happened and kind of in reference to our in concept approval and kind of with some recommendations that we were asking for and how you guys specifically kind of address those, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for including us in the November meeting. And as you said in your letter dated October 26th, the DRB requested that we provide responses to 5 specific comments. We submitted those in writing and we'll explain them now. And we will also explain some additional proposed changes that address feedback from our neighbors. First, in reevaluating the chimney, we include 2 chimney options for the board's review. Option A, removal of the chimney altogether and conversion of the wood-burning fireplace to gas. And option B, broadening the base of the existing chimney for a more balanced appearance. Second, reevaluating the garage door design. We provided 3 garage door options for the board's review. Option A, the original version shown as option 1 in our submission materials. Option B, an alternate clopay style. And option C, a more standard style matching the existing door. Third, reevaluating the possibility of moving the wall 2 feet inward on the upper right side. We explored the various options for moving the wall both 2 feet and 1 foot. After extensive revisions and conversations with our architect, we determined that doing so would be prohibitively complicated and would have numerous design ramifications that would affect the external aesthetics and the interior utility of our bathroom and work from home space. We explain these ramifications in detail in our submission materials, and in the interest of time, we can do so again upon request. That said, we took the intent of the board's request and that of our neighbors to heart, and we lowered all the roof pitches and clipped the top edge of the roof at the right, thereby reducing overall massing and lessening the impact on the listers, our neighbors to the right. We believe the board received the recently revised drawings and the scale drawing of our home, showing our home between our neighbors' homes. And if not, please let us know and we will submit them for your review. The roof line above the primary bedroom is now 2.5 feet shorter, and the center roof line, the tallest roof line, is now 4 feet shorter. The clipped right side roof line also allows for more sunlight on the right side. Our project manager, Mark, is also on the Zoom, and we'll let him answer any specific questions about those changes. Additionally, we consulted with a landscape architect, Emily Inglis of Kane Landscapes, about planting additional evergreen and deciduous trees to increase privacy, with the intent of collaborating with the listers to ensure that their needs are paramount. Fourth, reevaluating the relocation or possible removal of the side basement entry stairs. We were able to remove the side basement entry stairs altogether so as not to encroach to the edge of the property line that we share with the listers. We instead added a rear-facing sliding egress for a storage access window in line with the width of the windows above, so the exterior entry point for the storage space will not be on the side of the house adjacent to the lister's home. We thank them so much for chatting with us about this change. Fifth, clarify proposed lighting on the left side and at the back of the house. Exterior lights were added where missing to the sides of the deck doors and basement door. We would use the lights for which we previously provided samples. Additionally, some neighbors have asked questions about the logistics of utility and construction trucks parking on our street. We recognize that our home is located at an unfortunate pinch point where Tumbletree and French Horn intersect. We will make use of our driveway and front lawn as much as possible, and whenever possible, we will ask construction vehicles to park on Glade Drive. We are acutely aware of the intermittent emergency vehicle traffic on our street due to the health needs of several neighbors. Caring for a person with a progressively degenerative disease makes us sensitive to that. Additionally, we are acutely aware that children walk to and from the school bus on our street and ride their bikes on our street. We are parents of 3 young children. It is in all of our best interest to ensure that all of our neighbors are kept safe. Everyone is aware of the story behind our renovation and our sincere need for more space for our large multi-generational family. However, it bears repeating that we have made every effort to expand our home in a manner that is intentional, thoughtful, and considerate of both our neighbors and the character of the neighborhood. We responded to the Smalls neighborhood email to explain this and encouraged people to come to us with questions and suggestions. Many neighbors, including those who have lived in this neighborhood since its inception, reached out to us with words and letters of support. Several of those letters did not make last week's deadline. And if the board would like to read the letters, I'm happy to submit them for your review. I would, however, like to read an excerpt from one letter that we received from a total stranger who heard about our project through the grapevine. Mr. Paul Thomas and his wife, Heather, both grew up in Reston and are now raising their children one street over on Huntinghorn Lane, and they know our street well. Paul served as a member of the RA Board of Directors and as a liaison to the DRB. He writes in part, I applaud the proposed plan. This renovation will help the Piles age in place and support their family. Their plan doesn't drastically expand the footprint, wouldn't be taller than other nearby homes, and seems in keeping with an updated version of the Reston style. Though I have never met them, I applaud the Piles' commitment to their family and the Reston community. Most of the homes in this area along the Glade Stream were built between 1968 and 1972 and are due for substantial updates. I trust the DRB to help homeowners by guiding their efforts towards beautiful architecture that maintains Bob Simon's 6 guiding principle for Reston. Beauty, both structure and natural, is a necessity and should be fostered. We adore our beautiful neighborhood and are so grateful for the many neighbors who support our effort to remain here and support our family.
Great, thank you. The only thing I saw you mentioned, and just before I get to the affected parties, you had mentioned that you guys had submitted an elevation that showed the 2 neighboring homes in it as well. I don't see that as part of the application. Staff, do you know what they're referencing?
It is a link to a Dropbox file.
A link to a Dropbox file. I have what was submitted along with the responses is what I have on the screen.
Yeah, the only updated thing I see are elevations, and then there's a couple floor plans, but there's no actual context elevation that shows the neighboring homes as well.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we submitted that to Trevor. We can submit that as a link to you if you'd like to see it. It really helps put everything in perspective.
Yeah, is there a way you guys can you guys have it on a Dropbox link that you could just drop in the chat so I can see what that looks like?
Can you make it so it's not? We go.
And then while you guys do that, what we'll do is we'll go through the affected parties, and then we'll come back for discussion. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. So, staff, who do we have up first for that?
Gary and Valerie Lister. Are you on?
There, I think I'm unmuted now.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We've had ongoing conversations with Katie and Kenny subsequent to the first DRB meeting. Several of the issues that DRB had asked them to come back with plans for were from our initial suggestions. They have certainly addressed one completely by moving the door that was to have been stairs around the side of the house facing us around to the back of the house, for which we're grateful. They've also reduced the massing of the house, the roof line, in 2 places, including nearest to us by 2.5 feet, for which we're also grateful. It shows good faith on their part. We remain concerned about the bump out, on the side of the house. It's going to come out to 2 feet towards our house. I understand the reasonings behind it. I'm not an architect. I can't speak to the specifics of how it would or wouldn't impact the rest of the design. But again, I take it on good faith that they did explore it and found that it wasn't practical within the general guidelines of what they need to do. Subsequent to the first meeting, we weren't really aware that the house was actually coming forward 8.5 feet. That's an issue as well, but not a huge issue for us because it doesn't materially impact the side of our house so much as it brings that house a little further forward towards the street on that side, but sort of in line with the larger part of the house. So I understand that from an aesthetic standpoint and a balance standpoint. I would say with the exception of the bump out, we are generally okay with the rest of the plan, and then we've had discussions with them about some placement of some windows on the side as well. Those discussions will keep going. I don't anticipate there'll be an issue there. The only thing I would say in closing is my only real problem with this whole process has been when this started last month at the meeting, DRB representatives came on and said that this was could be just a quick approval before anybody had ever had a chance to speak at all about this process. And I'm not quite sure what the process is supposed to be, but it doesn't sound like it's that.
Yes, hi, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Glenn Small.
Mr. Small, I know you requested to have 6 minutes. I can since you're representing a group of for you and your wife, I can allow 5 minutes if that's adequate for you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief then, and thank you for letting the other affected parties speak, as you indicated at the beginning of the meeting, and as you've done for the others. So I'll be brief. My wife Kimberly's on separately, so you'll have to unmute her separately. We understand the project might have been slightly scaled back, and we do appreciate that. It's a positive gesture. The changes do appear to be minor, and that really don't diminish the size and scope of this, in our opinion. We do appreciate the gesture, though, and we also appreciate that this forum is meant to be a fair and open process, and your role as DRB members is to act impartially and to represent all of Reston, not just applicants and not just the people on the call tonight. We have elaborated out many of our concerns in an amended affected party statement, which hopefully you've all seen, hopefully you all will review. Importantly, there's new information contained in there that was not brought up at the last meeting, and also additional concerns like the amount of impervious surface that might be created by this massively large addition to a house. We ask that you carefully consider this new information and the other new information that will be coming to you before making a final decision. We did list out many concerns, and two of the most important ones for us are the size of the project and the precedent-setting nature of it. Maybe these other concerns that we have could be addressed, maybe not. But if this is approved, the two impacts that you'll be making will be irreversible and will have far-reaching consequences. As to the size, this proposal will take a 3,000 square foot home and make it 5,500 square feet, an 82% increase, and making it by far the biggest house on French Horn and Tumbletree. In fact, the new living space would actually be larger than 6 of the existing homes on these 2 streets. It's building a new home on top of an existing home with architecture that is unique for this neighborhood, creating a home that will stick out like the proverbial sore thumb, or as an advertisement for architects and builders. Second is the precedent. By approving this, you would set a new precedent that opens wide the door for many more projects like this one. This has far-reaching impact outside of these 2 streets, and it impacts many more people than have registered as affected parties. Many more would register if they knew about it, but they don't. At the last meeting, it was all about materials and architectural term items, but this project is much more than that. It's really about the future of Reston. What kind of community do we want? Is it one that just allows whatever Fairfax County zoning allows? Because there's many things that Fairfax County zoning allows that RA does not allow. So we urge you, please take seriously this new information, these concerns, and the additional voices that you'll hear tonight, and do not approve this. Think of your duty to all Reston residents. If you could switch to my wife, Kimberly, she's on separately.
Did you leave? How much time did you leave me?
I don't know.
How much time do I have?
2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank the board. This is very important work that you do, and I know this is on your own time, and I appreciate that, serving the community. I have 3 big reasons why I don't think this project should be approved. Impacts to the earth. Glenn just mentioned it, the impervious surface of the roof. You can't undo that. In fact, I wouldn't mind tearing the whole house down and making one with a smaller roof. I just think that's super important, and I think we all have responsibility to do that, rather than retrofitting a 1970 house with a giant mega roof and multiple gables. My second point is peaceful enjoyment. It's right there on the DRB form, and it's peaceful enjoyment, not just of my home, but of my community. My future residents have a right to have neighborhoods with consistently sized homes. If we allow a house like this to come in, the developers, the builders, they're going to be so excited to go to our residents, just like what's happened in Vienna, and have all kinds of random buildings with beautiful new materials. We all know the new materials are great, but it does not blend in with the community, doesn't look like Reston. It's not peaceful enjoyment. I also have personal worries. This is a pandemic. There's a supply chain crisis. There's terrible inflation. How is this going to impact the construction? How long will this really take? I can't imagine it would really only take 8 months. I think we're looking at over a year or more. In my backyard, in my front yard, on my street, where my kid plays, where I walk the dog, and my neighbors do, and the elderly people do, and the disabled people, including, well, the piles won't be there, so they won't have to suffer through it. But then they're going to want to move back. And I'm saying this with love, Katie and Kenny. You're going to want to move back to a community where you're
Sorry, your 2 minutes are up. Thank
this
you.
inconvenienced. Will you really live?
Great, thank you. Is there any other affected parties, LaShonda?
Yes. Is there Katie Brown? Kenny Pyle?
Well, those are the applicants.
Just kidding, just sorry. Gary or Karen? No, Gary or Karen. Paul Thomas. I believe your statement was read earlier, but is Paul Thomas on? Lester and Barbara DeCosta.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, Mr. DeCosta.
I'm speaking for Barbara as well. We've been driving around neighborhoods outside of Reston, watching the large houses come in and take over the neighborhood and become a mishmash. And that's our concern, that this would set a precedent to start that process. And we would start to see the houses all go into a mishmash of big, small, moderate. Also, it would ruin affordable housing in the neighborhood and have a lot of environmental concerns as well, with a stormwater runoff and all the additional emissions from heating and cooling, something that size. It just doesn't fit the neighborhood. That's our concern.
Great, thank you.
Laura Larson.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So we've listened tonight and you all have talked about lighting and cameras and trees and shutters. And we're talking here about more than doubling the size of a house in a very small lot area. And we've had conversation with Katie and discussed this. We've had multiple conversations with our neighbors, and we are definitely against it. We've talked to no one who is for it. And they want to say that they love their neighborhood. Well, they don't. They want to change it. And I would recommend a motion that the Pyle Browns go back to the drawing board and design a reasonable size addition that is not visible from the front. I also want to let you know that I'm a certified floodplain manager. I understand what water does, what impervious surfaces do, and there's laws called the no adverse impact, where property owners cannot be affected by what a neighborhood is doing. So you have all my comments here. The home is considered certified as a backyard habitat. I don't think that they've kept up with that. It'd be a super big shame. I guess they're allowing. Okay, I'd like to stop my comments here, but again, we are not for this. No one in the neighborhood is for this, and I'd like to let Brent, my husband, talk about his ideas.
The proposed build size is unprecedented in size and architectural style for Tumbletree Way in French Horn. the plans and size should be downsized accordingly. The tumble tree and French horn has no cluster covenants to protect residents from unprecedented bills. And it is the duty of the Resident Association, the Design Review Board, should be to support and enforce existing neighborhood standards rather than to promote or approve unprecedented sizes and to introduce unique architectural styles to any neighborhood in Reston. And if shutter color makes a difference, certainly doubling the size of a house should make a difference. Tumbletree and is a dead-end street off of Glade. French Horn is a dead-end street off of Tumbletree. There is no through traffic. We have seen single contractor vehicles impede traffic. I've had to call the police before just to be able to get a car through the street. We have several elderly residents in the neighborhood, as well as a disabled person in our home. All of these folks have had ambulance visits over the years, and we have serious concerns that a project of this size would impede safety. And finally, I'd like to mention that in our home, the disabled person service dog, we installed a single motion detector light on the back side of our house, not visible from the front, from the side, and over 200 feet to the nearest house behind us through heavily wooded area. Reston Association made us take that down, even though the light was at an existing fixture site, pointed straight down, illuminated the 4 steps of our deck as well as the ground immediate around there, and that light turned off within seconds of leaving the area. If Reston
Your
would
3
not
minutes are
approve
up.
something of that scale, how can they approve adding?
Thank you, sir.
Do we, Devin and Michael Harnett?
Yeah, hi, I'm on the line. I was actually unaware that I'd be able to speak tonight. Trevor said that our form came in too late, so I don't have prepared remarks, but I'll try my best with what we submitted. We are in support of this project. I do know that Katie and Kenny have been, for starters, they are doing this remodel for a very human reason. They have very family specific needs. They are building in wheelchair accessibility into the house. That is going to force certain design elements. And I think as good neighbors, we need to be aware of that and really acknowledge their situation and understand that there is going to need to be a reconstruction of some sort. What I'd like to say is we've talked a little bit about the precedent. What I wouldn't like to see is the DRB use this as a case to set a precedent that no home remodeling can occur in this neighborhood. These homes are aging. I think that, we have a beautiful couple of streets with homes with varying sizes. Many of them are small. They're smaller than 2360 Tumbletree. I think it is conceivable that when those homes go on the market in the future, that families would be looking to renovate them. They are 3-bedroom homes. That is very uncommon. This isn't an affordable housing neighborhood. It's uncommon for a family to be looking for just a 3-bedroom home. So really what I'd be looking for is, DRB setting a precedent with these plans, making the right decision on the type of house that can be reconstructed here that would say, in the future, Reston's going to have to evolve. Homes are going to have to be remodeled. Certainly we don't want to be the next Vienna, but I do think we need to be open to reconstructions of this sort.
Great, thank you.
Dan and Amy Linder.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for taking the time in the DRB. Thank you for doing this. You folks have a lot of patience. So I have prepared comments. So we have lived in Tumbletree since 2002. And first, let me say that I believe every homeowner should be able to do what they want with their property within reason because they bought it, until or unless others are impacted. Unfortunately, this project will definitely be impactful to the rest of the neighborhood. 2360 is at the confluence of French Horn and Tumbletree. This is probably the most likely traffic or a place for a traffic choke point. I had sent a Google Earth slide to Trevor Wright that provided the visuals of the street. During the 8 to 24 months construction process, and I believe because of construction issues and supply chain, it's going to take a long time to do this. During that process, construction vehicles, cranes, trucks delivering building supplies, these all could inadvertently block Tumbletree and French Horn and prevent an ambulance or fire truck from getting to the other homes in the neighborhood in a timely fashion. There was just the fire engine and the ambulance were just in the neighborhood 3 weeks ago. This is very concerning and truly an unknown variable. Unfortunately, the construction site activity will affect both French Horn and Tumbletree, which is 30+ homes. Should this happen, then the results would be catastrophic. I hope to understand, and the next point is, I hope to understand where the construction dumpster is going to be placed. I mean, it's a very tactical issue, but I think it's important. Again, 2360 Tumbletree has very little frontage. If this project proceeds, is the dumpster going to be placed in the current driveway? Rhetorically, I'm curious about that. I thought that the driveway was to be used for the builder's equipment and access. If this project goes forward, then I would like to see an escrow account set up to cover tire damage from construction debris for the residents of Tumbletree and French Horn. Nails and screws from construction projects always wind up, and we've left next to projects where they are not wanted. In this case, in the Michelin's tires of others. The last thing, the other point is, where will the construction vehicles park? Again, the lot has very little frontage for parking. This becomes a scenario that will exist for the duration of the project, with the other residents being inconvenienced due to parking, traffic for 1 to 2 years. The next point, where are tractor trailers and construction vehicles going to turn around? Construction trucks, cranes, and I've seen many trucks over the years get jackknifed on our street because it's just not that wide. And the last thing is again, the word Preston comes up. The proposed home would be beautiful when completed, no doubt. It looks really nice. It would be the only craftsman style home in a neighborhood of 30+ colonials, split levels, and ranches. So I do think, and a lot of people have renovated their homes. At the same time, this is a total redo, and I think the neighborhood can be inconvenienced for we're talking 1 to 2 years. And so is RA's goal to set precedent or to discourage it? This will definitely set precedent for, I think, all of Ruston. So thank you. Thanks again. And those are my comments.
Thank you.
Fred and Lee Evans, Joan Bear.
Hello, how's everybody doing tonight?
How's it
Just
going?
wanted to provide some comments. I do not have any prepared comments, but we did submit a formal comments to the DRB. I think a lot of our concerns are going to echo the concerns of the other neighbors in the community. Probably the biggest concern that we have is the size, particularly with the roof peaks, both on the front and the side of the house. It's quite a departure, like previous owners have said, from the designs that we presently have. It's a beautiful design. I absolutely agree with that. I think it'll be a beautiful home. I'm just not sure it fits the neighborhood. The roof peaks are very tall. It would become a very, very imposing fixture on the street. The other comments that I have deal with the setbacks. I think the lot lines, while people may be able to build up against the lot lines, when you start encroaching outside of the footprint on the house, particularly to the front and the sides, that causes areas for concern. And losing 8 feet of the driveway to the front is really a difficult element to kind of deal with. I think some of the houses on Tumbletree are very close to the road, and another 8 feet of driveway loss would be rather significant. Construction traffic, cranes, equipment, tractor trailers, all these things are definitely a concern. I don't want to beat a dead horse because a lot of that's been dealt with before. I agree with the time frame. It's going to be over 12 months. Etc. So, if this project is to go forward, my one request would be that there is a traffic management plan that is put in place, something that would be enforceable, something that all neighbors in the community would be aware of, so that we know what to expect. you know, the challenges with parking, the location, the equipment, the dumpsters, the cranes, the heavy equipment, all these things are going to be a factor. And as long as they're dealt with ahead of time and there's a plan put forth, you know, that would be a reasonable accommodation, but it should be thoroughly addressed. And I think the last thing, as other people have espoused to, is the precedence that it sets. I don't think there's any way that this could not be conceived as a precedent if this plan is approved in its present form. I think that's all the comments that I have. Thank you for the time.
Great, thank you.
Joan Bear. Demi DeFucus. Jernoid.
Hi there, it's Demi DeFakius. So one of the things I do appreciate very much that the board is willing to listen to the affected party statements that went in a little bit later. I just want to point out that, you know, I've been sitting here for 2.5 hours listening to people get pretty heated about things like shutters and security lights and things that are much candidly less significant than what's going on here. And I think if you listen to the tone of a lot of the comments that are being made here, it says a lot about our neighborhood. I don't think anybody is unsympathetic to what this family is dealing with and to the need to change their home. Everyone that I've spoken to has commented on how beautiful a house this is going to be. Everyone I've spoken to has commented that they have every right to renovate their house. They should be able to renovate their house. But I think something Devin said is really important. We don't want to be the next Vienna. And there's been a lot of comments spoken about that. My biggest concern, and frankly, the reason that we put an affected party statement in, is because very few of our neighbors knew anything about this. And that candidly is alarming. We replaced our windows 2 years ago, and my husband had to put paperwork in 6 or 7 times, measuring every window from every dimension, 3 or 4 times. And the idea that I had no idea that a project this big was even under consideration until really emails went out in the neighborhood. And I didn't know until I got the homeowner's email, just how far back it's extending, right? 16 feet beyond the back of the house, and the middle back is 5 feet beyond that. The bump out dimensions, 8 feet forward in the garage. Like, I didn't know about this until the homeowner, was responding to some of the things going on in the neighborhood. And I think that Fred said it really, really, really well. We need to understand the plan for dealing with the construction. That's not included, and it's going to be a big deal in our neighborhood. And I think their willingness to work with the listers demonstrates that there are additional compromises that can be made here. Nobody wants to keep them from renovating their house. We just want to make sure that the house we all have to live with at the end of the day, one, goes up in a way that doesn't ruin what is really an incredibly supportive neighborhood, and 2, doesn't create a structure that fundamentally changes the nature of our neighborhood, even as we allow people to modernize. I can say that I personally have been in a position where my neighbors have supported me through all sorts of changes in my family. None of us wants to deprive this family of that support. We just want to make sure that a DRB decision doesn't create a situation, that candidly ruins one of the best neighborhoods in Reston.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Jason and Amy Minto.
Yep, here. First thing, addressing the size directly affects our property. We'd like to see the elevation diagram that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. But more importantly, it's the water runoff. The size of the roof is more than doubling in size. And our property has an easement that handles all the water runoff for our street on Tumbletree. So what we're doing is we're talking about potentially increasing the waterfall that we have by 1/3. That easement and on our property is already destroying our driveway. You can see a ditch in it from where the erosion is coming out on that. So I'm not happy about that at all, because it's going to create nothing but problems for me. Second, the architecture. So the craftsman style home sums it up, but there's questions about like the PVC bracket that's in the easement. So if you look at the proposed front elevation, we take a look at the garage doors. The garage doors don't match any of the garage doors, which was brought up in the first meeting. We take a look at the columns. We only see one picture of the columns. We don't know what the columns look like. Would they match the square columns, the simple columns that we have on the houses here? What about these shingles that are going in? We don't have any other property on in any of our 2 streets in the neighborhood that look like that. It looks totally different. You know, any attempt to say that we're expanding this is misleading, because that's not what's happening. Thirdly, when we talk about the space out front, there's definitely a traffic problem there. If you go back to Mr. Lender's map that he had up there, you can see a car parked in the front. In the beginning of the meeting, they said that construction vehicles can park in their yard. But if you take a look at it, also that picture that Mr. Lender submitted, there's a massive tree in their front yard. There is no place for additional construction vehicles to park on their property, especially if it's coming at up feet. Furthermore, there's additional people that are going to be living on the property. I don't know the details for that, but my concern is that they're already parking on the street when they have a 2-car garage. If they come out an additional 8 feet, that takes away their ability to park in the driveway potentially. And after the construction limits the, you know, traffic that we have going through the neighborhood. And so those are my 3 concerns, and thank you for your time and your support.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right. Is there anyone else that wasn't called on that's here? Raise your hand now. All right. If you guys could unmute the applicant so we can go back to the application. All right. So I guess I'd like to go around and see if anyone has any initial questions, feelings. I do think it's important. I don't know, staff, if you guys can pull up that Dropbox link that they sent. I think there's one key difference between what is in this Dropbox link and what is being submitted to us tonight, is that the elevation in the application I'm looking at is 712 for the slope of the roof, and then what they're putting in the Dropbox is that it's a 512 pitch, which I think is going to make a substantial difference. So I'm not sure why this wasn't part of the application. Maybe it just came in a little too late. I'm not sure, but also having that elevation 3D rendering of the full scope. I don't know if everyone on the board was able to open it, but it definitely kind of helps show the scale of this. And honestly, I think it would help alleviate some of the concerns I just heard from a lot of people about the massing on this house and showing it in context next to another 2-story house. Staff, do you have the ability to pull up that rendering from that link?
Yes, one moment.
Now, whether we're going to need this documentation actually presented, you know, actually sent in, and we need to get it in our application. But if you could kind of zoom in there, I think I'd want to point out to a lot of people on the call that from a scale perspective and a massing perspective, you know, this house has come down a lot in height, and it's very similar to the house next door to the right. And so I just want to kind of point that out kind of as a starter. So let me go around to Jim. Did you have any questions, comments about the revised design and what has been presented?
Michael, from what I'm seeing, it looks like a significant adjustment in the mass on the right side. I think that it's a big improvement over what was presented previously.
Great. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Mike, did you have anything?
Nothing else from me, Michael. Obviously, there were a lot of things brought up, and please keep in mind that a lot of the things that were discussed as concerns from the neighborhood aren't things that we on the DRB have.
Yeah.
So.
Karen, did you have anything?
Oh, I agree that the change in the roofs makes it, scales it down considerably, and it starts to deal with the horizontalness of so many of the houses as opposed to the height. I was really interested in what there were a couple of people that talked about the runoff. And does anybody here know, is there something that is required for your permits and approvals in Fairfax County that require site issues to be worked out in detail?
Yeah, so I know that they have a pretty extent. I mean, I know like I have a house that I'm working on right now that we're having to do a big underground storage tank to hold, a bunch of the runoff of water to prevent runoff from other properties. What they're going to entail them to do here, I don't know. Katie, have you guys gotten to that point with a site plan?
So we have had a engineer come through, evaluate the entire site, the runoff from the roof, and it has been approved by the county. It's the standard that you cannot have water running off of your lot. And I don't know all the details of it. I wasn't.
But you guys did do a site. There was a site, because what it's following up on my question is there was no updated plat or site plan presented to us with these modifications that you guys did, like removing that stairwell, some other stuff. Was that ever updated to accommodate those couple of changes?
We would have to check with Mark Miller, our project manager. I'm not sure if he's, I'm pretty sure he's on the Zoom, and he would be able to speak better to that.
Staff, can you find Mark? See if maybe he's MM. There's a
Yes,
MM guy.
Mark Miller is on. Mark, you're unmuted.
The MM is not me. To answer the first question, yes, there is what's commonly referred to as a grading plan, and that's a study by a civil engineer, and it takes into account the entire runoff to comply with the Chesapeake Bay Act. That needs to be submitted to the county, and it needs to be approved, and that is complete. So we have a grading plan approval. The additional things that have been done here only improve that. We've taken away the areaway on the right side of the house, which is a potential place for water to collect, and that would have been handled with a drain. And the change puts a window on the back with an egress window, and that water can escape that window well by just gravity. So all of these are improvements in impervious calculations. But the concerns that people have raised, I understand that they weren't privy to the entire application process for getting a building permit, but that is a requirement for a project of this size to get a grading plan, and that's been done.
And now, was that submitted to us?
It was.
Because I don't know if we have record of it. I guess what I'm leaning towards there's a couple of things that I feel like are missing. Is I don't have an updated site plan, I don't have a landscaping plan, and I don't have a grading plan, which, the grading plan and landscaping plan and site plan all probably is going to end up being just one or two drawings that are all, can all be kind of combined. Have you guys talked about landscaping? I know you briefly mentioned potentially screening options for some of these larger elements. Is there an actual plan that exists that you guys would be able to submit?
So there were 10 pages of grading plans submitted with the original application.
Scrolling down. But have we updated since then or no? Okay, so I'm here. Okay.
There hasn't been any change to the footprint to update the grading plan.
Okay. Because all I see slide 96 is a tree. This looks like it's an arborist tree plan. Staff, do you know where that's like? I guess the site plan, it doesn't still show the areaway and having to worry about getting rid of those stairs.
That's the grading plan you're looking at right now.
What slide is that, Staff?
I'm on slide 96. That's actually the existing tree survey.
That's a tree.
It's part of the grading plan, though.
And then
But
this is,
that's showing the old house there. I mean, that doesn't show the new house.
yeah, that's all the material stuff.
I saw there was a plat with the original application on slide 86, which kind of showed your disturbance fence and your trees, and it shows that areaway, which is no longer, the stairwell is no longer going to be there. But I don't think I've ever seen an actual grading plan with topography and where the water is all going and how the stormwater runoff is being maintained. I mean, are you guys having to utilize any sort of rain capturing system, or is it all just gutters and downspouts? And
there are no infiltration trenches. It's all handled by the size of the lot and directing the grading toward the center.
Yeah, so I guess what all I would say is I don't have a grading plan. You guys may have submitted it. I don't see it. We would need to get that submitted just from a clarifying error, just for some of us to make sure that we have it on the record. With your address to the changes, I appreciate you guys looking at it. I think you guys have a couple of options in here. I like the garage door that kind of mirrors kind of what the front door is going to be. I think that one kind of works the best with the design. I like the new 512 pitch that is shown in the Dropbox link. I don't know if it wasn't submitted in time or what, but I think that drastically lessens the height of this structure and really, shows it in context with the house next door. It's kind of exactly what we pointed out last time at the meeting, that the two-story house next door, it appears a little bit smaller, but your drawings are making this house seem like it's this huge, big house, when really it's the same amount of levels as some of your neighboring houses. So to me, it's not overwhelming to that sense. So I appreciate the changes. I like the idea of maybe just for the chimney. If you guys are open to not doing wood burning and you just want to convert it to a gas, I think maybe that just makes sense. That helps maybe that massing on that side kind of go away, because it kind of doesn't make sense to have a chimney there anymore, because your roof line is changing so much and it keeps going up that it almost might look out of place to have that chimney. So I would be okay with removing of that chimney as the option that you guys put on there. So I think I like where it went personally. I think it looks good. I just think there's a little bit of clarification with staff that we need to get the proper drawings submitted with, the proper pitches that you guys are submitting with this 512, the grading plan that does exist, but we don't have record of it. And then I would just suggest kind of a new what's the new landscape plan for any new plants you guys are planning on doing, and kind of where those are going. I think all the light placements are fine. I don't see any issue with those. And I would want to make sure that you guys get this, street scene to scale. They all put this in the application so people who are reviewing it can see this, because I think it really will alleviate some of those concerns that people are having about the sizing. I think it's really well done how you guys have kind of incorporated the old architecture. I'm not necessarily worried about it being Craftsman, all the other houses kind of being a little different, because you guys are in a single family detached neighborhood where variation is allowed. As long as you guys are still using similar coloring and it's still going to blend into the nature around. And I think we can also help with the landscaping plan. I think we can help work it and where it'll stay kind of within the rested character that we're looking for. So those are kind of my comments. So with that all said, does anyone else have anything to say? Any sort of motion?
I would like to find out if there's a lot of talk about the how the construction is going to interface with living. and the roadways and things like that. And is there appropriate time to talk about that, or that's not something that's not up to us? Or
Yeah, unfortunately, and Tony, are you still on? I don't think we really have any say in any of that. Correct, Tony?
I just wondered if they had to have any plans about how they're going to get in and out and work around everything. So that's
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
that's really not the purview of the DRB.
that's what I figured. Yeah.
all
So
right. Thank you.
yeah, it sounds like it's more of a good faith to your neighbors if you guys can have a plan in place for some of those things, but there's nothing really we can
Okay. Great. Thank
we can enforce or ask for. So anybody want to take a stab at a motion, or if not, I think I could take a motion. So I'll motion to approve the plan as submitted, but we need all the documentation that I listed before it can officially. So I guess it's still an in concept approval still, because we just don't have this information on the record. So approval of the design and the changes, I think all is good, but I need all the information with the updated roof size, and I need the grading plan and a landscaping plan. And specifically, that grading plan just kind of needs to show where the water is going and how we can I just want to see what we're doing. Are we daylighting it all the way at the backyard? Is it daylighting halfway through? Is it in a perforated pipe that's halfway? Where is the water going, so we make sure that it's not affecting the surrounding properties. And I think that would help alleviate a lot of the concerns of the residents that we've heard around this. So what I'll do is, so my motion is to approve in concept the updated application and requesting the final site plan, landscaping plan, grading plan, and to update all the documentation to match this Dropbox link with the 512 pitch, and showing this 3D rendering kind of in the application so people can see it.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that?
A question from me, Michael, in terms of just the formation of what we just did there. Any interest in or any worthwhile to approve it and then stipulate that the additional documentation be provided within?
What's tricky is it just doesn't, if it was just looking for those other like grading plan and site plan, I think I would have. But the fact that the elevations that I'm looking at are 712 pitch and it needs to be 512 pitch. I don't see
those elevations right there, Michael, are 512.
But this is the Dropbox link that we were sent. This isn't in the application that I was given. Unless I'm wrong, staff. Isn't that the Dropbox?
I understand.
Link
we submitted it.
This is what was provided to present tonight. The Dropbox link was additional.
So that information it's not in application J. Is it somewhere else? Dropbox link that I'm just not seeing.
It's not. It was put in the Dropbox link by the applicant. It's not.
That's my point. So we don't have that. We don't have that in our files. Is what I'm saying. That is not in application J that I'm reviewing. I don't know, Cam. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. It is not included in the J that was posted, nor with the DRB application.
Correct. So I need that information officially submitted so we can, that can all be put up and everybody can see it. And that way, that's all I'm asking for. So I see it. What you have here is great. This is just what I want to get officially into the application. Katie, do you have something? Your hand is up.
We did, and I apologize. I think we thought we had submitted it in time to Trevor, and it appears there was just a miscommunication. So we'll follow up and do that formally.
Okay, great. So there's a motion and a second. There was a little further discussion. So Mike, does that kind of make sense? Why?
It's fine. I wanted to talk it out because obviously I don't want to belabor the points unnecessarily.
I know. I just wish if we had that information, I think it would have made it a little bit easier. But I think getting those little bit of final stuff, letting all these people who are now involved fully see the final thing, and that it really is not as large as they, it's not going to be these, 10-foot soaring ceilings that all these places in Vienna have. The house is still a proper size for the neighborhood. So I just want people to kind of notice that. So let's take a vote on the application. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Jim, did you vote? I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So the motion passes 4-0. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our final agenda item, which is the schedule, the calendar. Let's see, let's pull that up. So what are we looking at here? Just giving you guys the...
Yeah, this is the annual design review board calendar for 2020 with all the updated holidays.
2022.
2022.
I was like, let's not go back to 2020, please.
Oh, yeah, it's 2022.
I don't want to go backwards. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna keep the same panel arrangement. I guess the only question was, so we weren't thinking of maybe altering and going to, we just don't have a way to do the 2 panels a month to basically temporarily until we get those vacant seats filled. And obviously I'm going to ask the persistent question, Cam, any applicants for joining this lovely board?
We have one. She, as I mentioned, was not on the deed, so technically she wasn't a Class A member. She has successfully become a Class A member, but her license was not active, and so she is working on getting her license active where it was and transferring it to Virginia. But she anticipates that being done in early 2022, so hopefully we'll have a new member sometime before.
As long as she's a licensed architect in any state, it should qualify for the deed, right? I mean, if you're an architect in one state, you're an architect. Oh, in the term, in the sense of the term. I don't think our deed specifically says you have to be licensed architect in Virginia, does it?
Tony can elaborate more on that, but I think the basic understanding is that if you are considered an architect, you need to be licensed in Virginia in order to act as an architect. Is that correct, Tony?
Correct when I came.
That's I'm happy to prepare a more formal statement on that.
Yeah, I want a 10-page letter on it. I mean, yeah, okay, I understand. I guess the only reason why I brought it up is, like, when I originally got licensed, I was only licensed in DC, but I was still an architect, and then I got reciprocity in Virginia, Maryland, whatever.
Right.
But I have no idea when I joined the board if I was licensed in Virginia. Technically, I don't even know. I think I was, but I don't even know how you guys would have verified that. But
Michael, when I submitted my application, they asked me that question directly.
Oh, okay, so maybe then I was already licensed in Virginia at that time. But I guess my point was, if they were licensed in DC, getting reciprocity in Virginia should be pretty easy. So hopefully it all goes through and we'll have them join the board in 2022. So I guess going back to my question about the calendar, we don't need to adjust the panels at the moment. It sounds like we'll just keep them as is. I just was trying to help alleviate some of those 3-member necessary applications that people wouldn't sign the waiver for. But have you seen those increased at all? Or LaShawn, have you seen those people not willing to do the 2-member panel?
I mean, the last couple of months we had a couple, but I mean, I wouldn't say it was an influx,
Okay, all right, yeah, because I feel like with the new acclamation votes, I feel like our panel meetings have been able to go a little faster from what I see. I don't know, has everyone else felt like that?
Yeah, I think Karen and I have been able to knock out, I don't know, 5 or so applications off our list before we really, get into it.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah, the quorum requirements are essentially being almost met. We're not too far off. The problem rests with when we have that one dedicated panel, one member doesn't show up or can't make it, that kind of throws us for a loop, because then that's the dedicated panel that we've kind of scheduled everyone who wants a 3-person panel on. We have to then bump them another X, Y, and Z. And so that gets into a dangerous territory of meeting the deed requirement for decisions.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess all we can ask, and I know I haven't been good about it, but you know, if someone misses and somebody can fill in, obviously it has to, I guess in that sense, if it's a professional member missing, then it needs to be a professional member that fills in, correct?
Yes, I would encourage any member who can't attend their panel meeting to potentially attend another panel meeting later that month, so that we could at least push it that way instead of them not coming to a panel meeting or a full board meeting at all.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we'll hopefully work through that, and we can hopefully we'll get a little bit better commitment from people in 2022 for showing up when they say they will. So I'm fine with this calendar. I don't know what my whole year of 2022 looks like. I want to be on vacation every month, so hopefully I'll tell you I can't come to any of these things. Who knows? I think overall though it looks fine to me. At this point I don't see anything crazy. I know we ran into one thing with like a holiday this year. Did we try to, like, it looks like, oh no, we're doing a con only the week of Thanksgiving, so that's probably smart.
Yeah, we gave you all a good break a couple of times.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want 3 months off after this meeting. All right. I think it looks good. Do you need us?
I have one
Yeah, go ahead.
question.
Yep.
How can I tell, when it comes to the con aspects of it, I don't know.
So your name will be on that kind of left-hand side column or that right-hand side column. So
Yeah. So
yeah, if you go to like March 22nd, you'll see your name there on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And that means you have con for that 4th Tuesday meeting, that you also are on that panel as well. So that one's a little unique that you have panel and con. But like February 1st, you have con, but you obviously don't have panel on that because you're not on the red panel.
I'm sorry, what was the one you just said that
February 1st.
February.
You have con up there. See your name on the right column there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it always that color? No.
No. You have to just kind of find your last name. So it looks like you have con about 4 times from what I can see.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, 5 times. You're busy. Okay. Well, do you need us to motion to approve? You guys need us to approve this, or is it just kind of you're sending it our way? Take a look.
Just sending it your way for reference.
Okay. All right. And do we have a full board meeting next week or next month? Or are we off?
Oh no, this is the last full board meeting.
Awesome. So I do get the month off. Well, I guess I have panel, but we do get the month off kind of. All right. Well, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you and have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks for your diligence.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.